Bari Luis Bolorin. Hello and welcome to our channel where we discuss all things Armenian. Feel free to look around and watch our other video content to get acquainted with our philosophy, with our material. But to summarize what we do here, we mostly talk about faith and hypersonic drones. That's right, we talk about supercomputers, hypersonic drones, how to make Armenia the most secure country in the world, and how to revive the faith that we used to have, that the disciples of Jesus the Christ used to have, to be able to walk on water, heal the sick, cast out demons, and raise the dead. That's right, Jesus used to say in Armenian, "Ura dzer havatka," where is your faith? And we're going to revive that kind of a Christ-like faith. By the way, did you know that Christ was not his last name? Jesus the Christ, and the Christ being the biblical term of Greek origin, which means Christos in Greek, which means the anointed one, a person that was destined to accomplish monumental tasks for the rite of passage into the spiritual world. And so we're going to discuss how we can revive our faith today. So welcome again to our channel. God bless you, and we hope to see you at the very top. And peace be upon you at all times. Our beloved brothers and sisters in Christ worldwide, I'm addressing 8.5 billion people on planet Earth, 2.6 billion fellow Christians, and 17 million fellow Armenians scattered around the world. We live in tumultuous times. We no longer hear about the rumors of wars. We actually are seeing them on our TV screens. There are 48 military conflicts going on concurrently at this time. In Africa, in the Middle East, in Eastern Europe. Very soon, things could go from bad to worse, where we might have a nuclear exchange between the United States, China, and Russia. Why do we have so many wars today? You might be asking yourself. The answer is quite simple. Because Satan runs this world. The majority of people are demon-controlled, demon-possessed, demon-influenced. And most of the politicians are under the influence of the dark forces. So do not be surprised that we have so many wars today. So what can we do as believers? We have our only solution is to have faith. We're going to talk about how we can increase our faith so we could have the same faith that the disciples of Jesus the Christ used to have 2,000 years ago. So we could walk on water, heal the sick, cast out demons, and raise the dead. Jesus said for us to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves in Matthew 10:16. Are we being wise as serpents and harmless as doves? On the contrary, we behave like little rabbits, timid rabbits. You know, you should probably watch The Silence of the Lambs by Dr. Hannibal Lecter, because that is the portrayal of being wise as serpents. And remember the scene when he calls Agent Starling to return? That's a ploy, folks. That's a ploy. When he says, Agent Starling, come back. And then he instructs her to do certain things that you can read about in the book by Tom Harris, or you can watch the film. The point is, unless we understand all the dynamics of the situation, and we could forecast it just like Dr. Hannibal Lecter could, we're going to lose. But with God on our side, with having the spirit of discernment, and by being wise as serpents and harmless as doves, we have the full armor of God, and we will be able to not only survive, but perhaps even thrive during these difficult times. So what is the good news? The good news is that we have a technological breakthrough. By connecting several supercomputers in a daisy chain, we have achieved what's called the technological singularity. So now we could produce nanomaterials that are lighter than paper and stronger than steel. We can produce hypersonic drones of various shapes. They go up to Mach 85, which is 109,000 kilometers per hour. We're in the process of introducing them in Armenia to make Armenia the most secure country in the world and also the most prosperous. We plan to build factories to build our drones across Armenia. We'll be paying very good wages to our staff, to our factory workers, to our engineers. We plan to unify all of our 17 million Armenians and bring them home to a Hayrenik, because we only have one homeland left, and that is the Republic of Armenia. Let's not forget that the times of having Western Armenia and Eastern Armenia are over. We only have one solitary Armenia left today, and that is the Republic of Armenia. We plan to bring millions of Armenians, maybe not 17 million altogether, but at least we plan to bring 3 to 6 million people, our fellow Armenians, to the Republic of Armenia. What is our purpose, folks? This is the most important part for us to figure out. Armenia's mission is to reunite God and man while advancing beyond nuclear technologies capable of preserving peace and preventing conflict across Earth. Armenia's mission is to reunite God and man while advancing beyond nuclear technologies capable of preserving peace and preventing conflict across Earth. Armenia's mission is to reunite God and man while advancing beyond nuclear technologies capable of preserving peace and preventing conflict across Earth. This is our grand mission as Armenians in the Republic of Armenia. We're going to have smart and tough leaders leading our country and leading our people. We don't need a musician. We need a smart and tough leader like LKY, who took Singapore and turned it within 20 years, turned it from a swampy island of 500 square kilometers into a prosperous, thriving metropolis, a financial center with an annual GDP of over $500 billion. Armenia's GDP is currently between $25 and $28 billion, while Singapore, which is 40 times smaller in size than Armenia, has a GDP of $500 billion. How could this be? Well, it's all about strategy. It's all about approach. It's all about your focus. It's all about your dedication to the cause. If we are to make Armenia the next regional superpower, we could do it. We just need to get together, have a strategy, and implement it the same way LKY implemented his strategy about Singapore. I have studied this approach all my life, especially the Japanese economic miracle. After World War II in 1945 Anno Domini, both the Soviet Union and Japan were completely devastated. They both lay in ruins. But within 20 years, Japan transformed into a superpower and became the number 2 economy after the United States, which was truly a miracle in terms of the economic achievements. A tiny little Japan that you could barely find on the map was outpacing the mighty Soviet Union with 12 time zones, from Kaliningrad all the way to Vladivostok and Kamchatka. At the end of 1980s, the Soviet Union's population was about 300 million. Japan's population was about 100 million. And Japan was surpassing the Soviet Union economically. Can you imagine that? How is it even possible? Without having any natural resources, Japan was outperforming the mighty Soviet Union with its massive, massive territory and massive population of 300 million strong. It's all about 2 schools of thought. 2 schools of thought that I've studied about Japan and their approach. And we're going to bring this know-how to Armenia so we can implement it in the Republic of Armenia. We're going to implement Nation Army based on the example that was implemented in Switzerland and in Israel. You see, Israel has the People's Army. Tzva Ha'am. Tzva means army, Ha means the, and Am means people. So it literally means the People's Army. Well, in Armenia, we'll have a similar approach, except we'll call it Nation Army, Azbanak. And Azbanak will be our best way of being able to protect our country and thwart the enemy. Protect the Republic of Armenia from any invaders and thwart any efforts of any potential invaders of even thinking about wanting to invade Armenia. With our hypersonic drones that will be hovering in the air about 1 mile, at the altitude about 1 mile, and monitoring the situation, we'll be able to provide 24/7 protection of our borders. We'll have 6,000 drones scattered around the perimeter of our country at the borderline. Our drones will be spaced approximately 250 meters apart. And our drones will engage their strobe lights to project peace and security by transmitting the word peace in Morse code to be visible up above by the airplanes and the ISS and down below on the ground. And this will be our way to demonstrate to the world that peace is achievable. In fact, we'll be enforcing peace in other regions after we stabilize our region. We'll dominate with agape love, folks. This is the most important aspect to understand. Agape love, by definition, is a Greek term, comes from the Bible, which means the highest form of divine unconditional love of God that surpasses all human understanding, that binds us all, that holds everything together as a glue in our universe. And that is the principle that we should be operating on. Plus humility and meekness. Meekness is another biblical term that defines who we are as Christians. So back to the Azbanak principle, or nation army. You know, when we got married, my wife and I, we were doing fire drills. We were just practicing what would happen. We were both 21 years of age. We would practice what would happen if we woke up one day and, our house was filled with smoke. What would we do? And you don't know unless you practice. So our fire drills were essentially about getting as low to the ground as possible, with our noses almost touching the floor. Why? Because in the event of a fire, oxygen is almost non-existent. And in order to get some oxygen, you have to get down to the floor level. If you were to stand up, you would pass out right away because of the toxic smoke. And you won't be able to see anything, and you will pass out immediately. So you have to practice that. Very similarly, we have to practice our defensive posture as a nation. And part of it is training, giving the weapons to the entire population of the Republic of Armenia. So everybody will have an M16 and AK-74, a pistol or two, and lots of hunting knives. And they need to be trained how to use them. I strongly believe that during the 1915 genocide and prior massacres, had the Armenian men trained their wives, daughters, and their sisters how to handle guns or weapons or daggers or knives or swords. If the Armenian women had been trained by their husbands, the casualties would not have been that severe. But they were not trained. That's the biggest mistake. Hopefully we can learn, and we can train our wives, train our sisters, train our daughters to be able to protect themselves with guns, with hunting knives, with other means, and not be just rabbits, helpless rabbits. Let me tell you a story. One day I was coming home from the office, and I told my wife I'm on my way, so dinner was pretty much ready. And I stopped at a stop sign, and it was just a dark spot. And with my headlights of my SUV, I was illuminating like a little baby rabbit that was sitting there. And it was kind of cute, I wasn't going to run over it, but it wasn't really moving, hopping along. In other words, it was just sitting there. I was waiting for it to start moving away. As I was thinking that, out of nowhere came this bird of prey. It was at night. It was illuminated by my headlights, and so it basically grabbed it with its massive talons and took it away to be eaten somewhere in its nest. It happened so fast I could not even see what type of bird it was, but more than likely it was a barn owl, because hawks or eagles, they don't hunt at night. But owls are nocturnal, and they have very powerful talons, and they could pick up a rabbit and take it to their nest or wherever they live. That's a lesson learned, not to be like these helpless rabbits. If you see light or you see exposure, you're being exposed, you immediately have to move away from danger. And that did not happen in 1915 during the massacres and the pogroms and that happened to our people in the Ottoman Empire. If the massacres were happening in a neighboring village and you knew 20,000 people were killed, why wouldn't you pick up your bags and move? Why would you want to wait until danger came to your village and it would be too late? It was a mistake. The Germans were also cooperating with the Turks during those events. They were helping them launder the money. Deutsche Bank was implicated as well. And they were raping Armenian women. The Germans were. That's why there's so many blue-eyed Armenian people. They were the product of the German rapes. By the way, there were many more than just the 1915 massacres and genocides that happened to our people, to Armenians. So the Hamidian massacres happened in 1894 through 1896, when 300,000 Armenians were killed. The Adana massacres happened in 1909, where 30,000 Armenians were killed in Adana and Cilicia. And of course, the Armenian Genocide started in 1915 on April the 24th, and it ended in 1923, during which 1.5 to 2.2 million Armenians were killed by the Turks. And that is a very, very unfortunate statistic, because that could have been prevented, again, if the Armenians would not be sitting like rabbits to be killed. Everything could have ended up differently. If the Armenian men would have trained and taught their wives and sisters how to protect their families in case they were taken away, then the Armenian women would have protected their families with everything they got, the weapons, the knives, the daggers, the swords. But that wasn't done, and that's a big mistake. Hopefully we'll learn from our mistakes, folks. What did they do to our people in 1915? On your screen, you're seeing the pictures, how they were collecting Armenian heads. They would put them on the bookshelves, and all those heads are somebody's relatives and friends, folks. These are very graphic images, so I want you to know this. This is very, very painful for me to share this, but we have to talk this out. We have to discuss it. Because if you get a psychological profile on who would do such a thing, who would cut off somebody's head and place those heads on your bookshelf as souvenirs, once you get inside the head of the person who would do such a thing, you'll understand who those people are. You have to get a psychological picture of who those people were. Let me help you understand who those people were. So the decision came from the very, very top. You see the picture of the decision makers who decided to plan and participate in the mass murder of the Armenians, Greeks, and Assyrians. All Christians. So it's a religious basis, then it's an ethnic basis, and then it's also a financial basis. According to our lawyers' calculations, $1.8 trillion in damages we will be pursuing in reparations from the Republic of Turkey and all other relevant parties. So our family members were robbed of $1.8 trillion in today's money, converted from 1915. That's what they were after, folks. Financial gain was their primary motivation, then sexual slavery of the women that they already had planned to capture by eliminating the men. It was 3-in-1. The Turks wanted to eradicate all non-Turkic people, all non-Muslim people. That's why the Armenians, the Assyrians, and the Greeks fell into that category. So they wanted to eradicate people based on their religion, ethnicity, and the language. That's why the Armenians, the Assyrians, and the Greeks experienced the genocide executed by the Turks in the Ottoman Empire. And we're going to help our Assyrian brothers and sisters. We're going to help our Greek brothers and sisters to run the lawsuits against the Turkish Empire, the former Turkish Empire, and the Republic of Turkey, because they are tormented to this day. They're all depressed and they're all not handling it very well, because to this day they have to deal with these massacres. I'm referring to the Assyrians. If you follow their social media, you'll see that to this day, they're being attacked in various countries where they live. The massacres have not stopped for the Assyrians. While they have stopped for the Armenians, they have not stopped for the Assyrians. Can you imagine living in pain and living in fear all your life, 24/7, nonstop, without knowing when the next massacre was going to come? That's the Assyrians, so we're going to help them as much as we can. So our dearest Assyrian brothers and sisters in Christ, feel free to contact us if you need help. We would be happy to assist with all of our resources, all of our know-how, all of our knowledge. We'll share with you everything we know. We're brothers and sisters in Christ. So let me offer another psychological reading of those monsters who would cut off somebody's head just to get to the wife, to the sister, or to the little girls, to rape them. This was their primary motivation. You eliminate the men, you cut off their head, you completely desecrate their humanity by taking off their heads and putting their heads on your bookshelf as a souvenir, or you put the heads on the fence in front of your estate, in front of your house. You see that on your screen right now. They would desecrate the Armenian men and the Greek men as well, and the Assyrian men, so they could steal the property, rape their wives, rape their daughters, rape their sisters. So who are those people, folks? Let me just tell you, I was raised in such a way, if there's a problem, you look within, you analyze what you've done wrong to put yourself in a situation like that. And so here's my question I'm posing to all of the Armenians out there. Was it worth the apricot trees? Was it worth having those wonderful fertile lands? Or is it better to move, pack your bags and move 1,000,000 miles away to a different planet if you have to? That part I don't understand. You don't risk your family or your own life to be living amongst those animals or those barbaric, the Turks or the Azerbaijanis, whoever they are, it doesn't matter, whatever the label you put on it. If that's the law of the land, they will come after you just to steal your property and rape your women. You have to move. If their neighboring village, they killed 20,000 Armenians, what more evidence do you need to pack up your bags and move? Why would you want to stay there? If the neighboring village was exterminated, the heads were cut off, the women were raped, and they would never move? They would just stay there and wait until their same death will be upon them? They're going to lose their heads? Their wives and daughters and sisters would be raped by the Turks, by the Kurds, and by the Germans. That's right. The Germans were participating. That's why there's so many blue-eyed Armenians. The German reporters, the German army, soldiers, officers, bankers, the German diplomats, all of them were participating. The men were exterminated. The women were raped. If you live somewhere where it's not safe, you move. If the neighboring village was exterminated, why would you want to stay there and be killed? I don't understand this reasoning. I was, again, raised in a different way. If the Turkish people in government would demand Armenians to pay higher taxes because they were Christian, that's already reason enough to move 1,000,000 miles away. What I don't understand is how these silly Armenian men that survive, you can watch them on YouTube, they so proudly sing those Turkish songs. And they say, that's the only songs they grew up with. That is just, I'm speechless. And the Turks came in, they beheaded your fathers, your grandparents, your relatives. And you proudly sing their songs? Why would you want to dance to those Azerbaijani songs? Azerbaijani melody, Azerbaijani anything. Or Turkish melody, Turkish songs, Turkish anything. You having an Armenian name, you being an Armenian, you say you're Armenian, you sing Turkish songs after they've done this to your people? This is where I'm having serious problems comprehending the logic behind those people. Supposedly promoting the Turkish culture because they grew up in Turkey or they grew up in the Ottoman Empire. Just ask a person that's very smart, should you be singing in Turkish or should you be dancing the Turkish dances with your, like those hands moving in this sort of a Azerbaijani way above your head? I don't think you should be singing in Turkish. I don't think you should be dancing the Azerbaijani dances. I don't think you should be doing anything Azerbaijani or Turkish. If you're Armenian, speak Armenian. Sing Armenian songs. If you don't know any, just whatever. Don't utter those Turkish words. Because the Turks came and they cut off your relatives' heads. They raped the women and they killed them too afterwards. 1.5 to 2.2 million Armenians were brutally killed in the most violent, diabolical, vicious, satanic way. And you're going to be singing Turkish songs after that? Somebody should tell them not to sing in Turkish on YouTube if they're Armenian. Even for folkloric treasure reasons, like they're preserving the Turkish culture. And that should be done if you're of Turkish descent. If you were born and raised in Turkey and your parents were not Armenian. Yeah, you could do that, sure, that's safe. But if you're an Armenian and your family was exterminated just a few years ago, a few decades ago, why would you want to be singing Turkish songs? At this time, I would like, if I may, to take this opportunity to express my particular gratitude to all Armenians who have contributed to the well-being of the people of the Republic of Armenia over the past 35 years. I pray with all my heart that our cooperation and alliance will continue for many years to come, because everything we've done so far is emblematic of the connection and love that we share for Armenia. I'm referring to our Western and Eastern Armenian brothers. And I'd like to ask everyone that we rededicate ourselves to each other and continue working on unifying all Armenians in 124 countries around the world. And folks, I'd like to mention a few individuals who have particularly contributed in a very special way to the well-being of Armenia. Dr. Panosian has been traveling to Yerevan, Armenia since 1987. He's now a retired engineer who used to work for NASA and Boeing and a few other companies. And he was responsible for maintaining and working on the shuttle engines that take the American astronauts into space. So he's an engineer, so he brought a lot of equipment to the scientific community in Yerevan, Armenia. And he was instrumental in keeping the spirit of the Armenian scientific community going during the especially difficult, dark times, or the dark 90s when the Soviet Union collapsed. From 1991 and through 1997, Armenia did not have much electricity or anything that was functioning for about 6 years approximately. Because of Dr. Panosian's contribution, they were able to essentially continue their scientific work. He was able to keep the community going, and they've been progressing with their scientific discoveries. And for example, the clean room that he helped organize in Yerevan would be instrumental in manufacturing 2 nanometer microchips for NVIDIA or for Rapidus Corporation of Japan. Our plan is to bring large Western manufacturers to offer jobs across Armenia. And Rapidus Corporation just started a $6 billion facility on the island of Hokkaido, and we're in negotiations to do something similar in Armenia. At the very least, if Rapidus Corporation will not build a factory in Armenia, we'll most definitely open an office where Armenian designers would be essentially designing the microchips for Rapidus Corporation. And as you may know, 2 nanometer microchips are cutting edge at this point, but Rapidus is talking about unveiling in the near future 1.4 nanometer microchips in Japan, and hopefully it will go through our office in Yerevan. So this is a monumental achievement thanks to Dr. Panosian's incredible efforts. Dr. Panosian, I'm eternally grateful to you. Anshapsh Dorakalim for all of your efforts and everything you've done for the Armenian people and the Armenian scientific community since you started traveling to Armenia. The second individual I'd like to highlight is Andrei Gumudjan. Andrei is originally from Belgium, and so his native language is French. He didn't really speak much Armenian when he came to Armenia a few years ago, but he learned that Armenia is lacking trees, that planting trees hasn't been done on an organized basis. And so he created his nonprofit called My Armenia Forest. You could check him out on myarmeniaforest.com. He has a YouTube page and other social media presence. So what Andrei was able to do is, in the last 3 years, they have been planting 900,000 trees across Armenia. Folks, that's 900,000 trees every year since he opened his organization just a few years ago. And his plan to be planting over 1 million trees starting next year. That's right, over 1 million trees will be planted by his team, by his organization, starting next year. Now, he's an incredible entrepreneur and philanthropist, and we need more people like Andrei. So, Andrei, I'm eternally grateful for everything you've done for Armenia. God bless you, and may the angels of God be with you with everything you do. And the third person that I'd like to mention is a legendary Armenian entrepreneur, Sam Simonian, who is responsible for starting a chain of scientific centers for Armenian youth, the Tumor Center. The Tumor Center has been instrumental in bringing innovation and scientific education to the Armenian youth for the past 10 plus years. And so thank you, Sam John, for everything you have done for the children of Armenia, for the youth of Armenia, and for just bringing your ingenuity and God's Spirit. God bless you, and we hope to see you do more for Armenia and for the world. The next person I'd like to mention is Dr. Zorian. Now, Dr. Zorian is such an incredibly kind individual that has done so much for Armenia I cannot even begin to mention, but if you know anything about him, he runs one of the largest corporate computer microchip manufacturers and designers, Synopsys Corporation. He has the Yerevan office, and he is just an incredibly positive and kind individual who has done so much for Armenia, who has introduced so many key business players from the West to open their offices and to have a large presence in Armenia that it's even impossible to mention. You know, from high tech to doctors and lawyers and other professionals that he has brought to Armenia is just incredible. Dr. Zorian, I'm just incredibly grateful to you for everything you've done for Armenia. May God richly bless you, and may you experience abundant kindness from the people that you meet in Armenia. The next person I'd like to mention is Dr. Oganov. Now, Dr. Artem Oganov is a legendary chemist, or I should say crystallographer. His expertise is in the field of nanomaterials. He got his first PhD in London, his second PhD in Zurich, ETH, and he spent quite a few years in the United States. Now here's what happened to Dr. Oganov. When he was returning home, he applied for a position at the Yerevan State University, and unfortunately he was turned down. They couldn't meet his financial requirements. So he ended up in Moscow at the Skolkovo Institute of Crystallography. So he runs that department at Skolkovo, and he also teaches at the Moscow Physics Institute. So he's incredibly gifted and talented, and we hope to bring him to Armenia one of these days. And so, Dr. Oganov, I'm eternally grateful for everything you're doing for humanity, and we certainly hope to see you in Yerevan. We're going to make an offer that will be very difficult to turn down. We're going to bring your wife and 4 kids to Armenia, and we're going to provide you with a house, an apartment, a summer cottage, a car or SUV, whatever you prefer, and a chauffeur. And if you require, we'll provide you with a security detail of presidential level. We need more people like this wonderful group of Armenians, because one of our goals is to stop the brain drain and actually try to reverse it. So let me kind of summarize what we do at our organization. I'm going to mention before I forget, we'd like to bring all Armenian detainees that are currently spending their time at a Baku, Azerbaijan prison cell. Ruben Vardanyan and other Armenian compatriots have been illegally detained in Azerbaijan by the Ilham Aliyev regime, whatever you want to call it. We're actually trying to work with them. So we have one of our good contacts in Brussels that goes to Baku every month on state business, part of the European Union oil initiative. And we're trying to use that connection to bring our boys home. And as soon as that happens, you'll be the first to see all of our Armenian brothers returning on a private jet to Armenia. And of course, that will be the day we're all going to celebrate. And now I'd like to mention what our primary goals are and objectives at our organization. One of these days, I'm going to give you a tour of our office so you'll see that 12 clocks, world clocks that essentially, facilitate when I make phone calls, I see right away what time it is in Geneva, in London, in Kiev, in Moscow, in Dubai, Mumbai, Beijing, Hong Kong, Tokyo, and other parts of the world. In Mumbai, it's an interesting story I'll really quickly mention. It's only an hour and a half ahead of Dubai. So it's not an hour, but it's an hour and a half. They have an hour and a half time difference between the rest of the world, and only time zone in India. So anyway, I'm going to give you a tour of our office next time, and I'll tell you now what we do. Our number one priority is to unify all Armenians and to make Armenia the most secure country in the world. How are we going to achieve that? Well, we're bringing high technology to Armenia that's been worked on, perfected, and tested in other parts of the world. For example, we're bringing our Ararat's RH-225 hypersonic drones to Armenia that will be patrolling the Armenian borders to make sure that the situation will be monitored 24/7. They'll be hovering at approximately at the altitude of about 1 mile. They can see in any weather. They have very sophisticated cameras, LiDAR cameras, onboard navigation system that will avoid any collision. And because they were made out of sophisticated nanomaterials, they're impenetrable, they're indestructible, they're fireproof, bulletproof, grenade-proof, missile-proof. And so they're equipped with EMP and psychotronic weapons on board, so they could detain a crowd, control a crowd, and most importantly, our drones could essentially disable a power grid in any country, and we have already tested that. So let's say we have an invader that wants to test their luck. We're going to send out our drones, and we're going to disable that country's power grid. They will have no electricity in that country. So we have extremely advanced technology that is approximately 300 years ahead of our current most advanced technology that you've ever heard of. These are our RH-225 drones that we call them Ararat's 225 for the Armenian application. RH stands for Reconnaissance Hypersonic Drones. 225 means that's the payload capacity. These are our smallest drones that we're bringing to Armenia. They're called the super compact size. 225 stands for the useful payload capacity. They can handle up to 225 pounds, which is about 102 kilograms. Their empty weight is about 54 pounds, which is about 22 kilograms. And the size of this super compact drone is 27 inches, which is about 69 centimeters. And the top speed that it can reach is Mach 85, which is approximately 106 or 109,000 kilometers per hour. So we were able to achieve this remarkable technology with the help of our supercomputers that we've connected in a certain daisy chain pattern. And we're basically making the computers challenge each other instead of working with them as a human-to-machine interaction, because a supercomputer has, much higher intellectual and knowledge-based capability than any human being. Now imagine two supercomputers talking to each other. The first thing that they do is that they establish their own language. They do not speak binary, they do not speak English. They actually create their own language, much more efficient language. And you should see it, folks. It's really something. It's like eavesdropping a conversation between two angelic beings conversating. Our second goal, our second aim is to create high-quality jobs across Armenia. So we're going to build factories across Armenia, not just in Yerevan, but in Gyumri, in Vanazor, in Ijevan, in Dilijan, in Berd, in Kapan, and other small towns in Armenia, where we'll be hiring local talent to build, manufacture our hypersonic drones. We'll be paying them Western-style decent salaries of $2,000 to $5,000. Now, our second goal is to boost Armenia's economy so it will reach $500 billion in annual GDP, all based on the example of Singapore. That's why my favorite example is using LKY's path. You know how LKY took Singapore and within 23 years, it became a world-class, $500 billion a year economy. How did he do it, folks? We're all going to apply everything that LKY has done for his country. We're going to implement English as the main language of communication. We're going to open Armenia for trade. We're going to bring foreign investments. We're going to implement other technologies that were introduced in Singapore in the 60s and 70s. And the next goal is to stop and reverse the brain drain that is happening in Armenia. The brain drain started in the early 90s when the Soviet Union collapsed and Armenia was part of the Soviet, one of the 15 republics of the Soviet Union. And so millions of people have left Armenia. And we are trying to bring the scientists and engineers back to Armenia and rebuild the infrastructure to where it was before, at least. The next point, folks, is corruption. We're going to unveil a robust anti-corruption campaign that will discourage anyone who even thinks about taking a bribe. We're going to, again, use Singapore's example and simply repeat what LKY introduced in Singapore. It was highly effective, folks. He did not even spare any of his friends. When his friend was caught red-handed with $1 million cash bribe from one of the American companies that was trying to get preferential treatment in Singapore, he did not spare him, folks. He sent him to jail for 150 million years because he said if he's going to spare his one friend, he would probably have to spare all of them. And they were all taking bribes. So zero tolerance, folks. You take a bribe, you go to jail for 100 million years, so to speak. The next goal is higher education, folks. We're going to bring top-notch educators, world-class diplomats that will be teaching future Armenian diplomats how to conduct business professionally. Armenia will have the best trained diplomats. For example, one of our retired American diplomats of Armenian descent will bring them out of retirement from his comfortable home in LA to Yerevan. He'll be teaching young Armenian future diplomats how to close deals, how to keep Armenia out of trouble, and how to make deals in Moscow, in Baku, in Ankara, in Istanbul, in Madrid, and worldwide, folks. This is something that is currently lacking in Armenia, unfortunately, but we're going to change that. The next point is reparations, folks. We're actually going to put closure to this chapter of Armenian history. We're going to pursue the Republic of Turkey for $1.8 trillion in reparations to be payable immediately, or else they'll be facing consequences that we're going to introduce to them. So reparations, folks, that I mentioned earlier in this video, Armenia has lost 1.5 to 2.2 million fellow Armenian souls, starting in the 1800s all the way until 1923. It's been beyond tragic. Folks, it's been just absolutely devastating to see what was done. We even mentioned the animal therapy for those who are depressed, which is pretty much every Armenian who has lost a family member in genocide or during the last few wars that Armenia experienced with Azerbaijan. Depression is a serious issue that needs to be addressed with something as simple as watching YouTube videos with animals. You know, you go on YouTube, 4K resolution, HDR, OLED screen, and you watch the Animal Planet. You watch Alfie the fox, you know, this cute little kind fox, fluffy fox, that will actually change your brain chemistry and you'll feel much, much better. Let me mention a couple of professionals that have visited Armenia who have contributed as professional psychologists. Carol Mumjan and Armina Nesesyan both came to Armenia to help the refugees from Artsakh get settled. And they both said the majority of people that they met, not just the refugees from Artsakh, but in general, people who reside in Armenia, they need some sort of therapy. The easiest thing to do, you could go for a walk. Daily walks in the park are absolutely vital for keeping that balance. Or if you're at home, you want to watch some animals on YouTube, that will help stabilize your mood. That will help you deal with depression, with anxiety, with other problems. And you will hopefully quit smoking, folks. That's a big problem in Armenia that stems from the same issue. So we're going to address all those issues. So the next point is we're going to introduce Armenian private bank. Typically, private banks are associated with high net worth individuals, but we're going to reverse this game. We're going to actually deal with small business owners across Armenia. Not necessarily in Yerevan, but in other small towns and villages. We're going to introduce interest-free loans. Folks, you heard me right. Interest-free loans for all Armenian business people who need a loan. And this is going to be revolutionary for Armenia. It's never been done before. Just to give you an idea, why interest-free loans? Because in all Islamic countries, riba-free loans or interest-free loans is the normal way of doing business. This is something that many so-called Christian Armenians don't know, or Christians in general in the West don't know. You know, they're so used to paying 5%, 15%, or even 30% on their loans. It's usury, folks, it's financial slavery. And how so-called Christian bankers are able to sleep at night, I don't know. Because if in all Islamic countries they don't charge interest, and in the Christian world, in the Hebrew, Jewish bankers are charging, Christian bankers are charging interest, I do not understand, folks, how that is even possible. That should not be happening, and that's why we're going to change that by introducing interest-free loans through our bank that we're going to get licensed in the Republic of Armenia very soon. And you'll see our phone number, feel free to call us, let us know what you do. Yes, folks, we're going to do a lot for Armenia. We're going to unify, bring 17 million Armenians on our platform, and at least bring 3 to 6 million Armenians to the Republic of Armenia. And we're going to organize them, get them settled in eco-villages based on their country of origin. For example, there are a lot of Lebanese Armenians that don't quite feel, kind of part of the Armenian enclave when they visit Armenia or when they move to Armenia. It's not the same mentality, not the same culture, They're not used to that Soviet mentality, Soviet way of doing business, Soviet way of thinking, Soviet way of walking, Soviet way of dressing. It's a different planet, folks. For Lebanese, for Canadian Americans, for Armenians from the United States, it's a different planet. So we're going to build eco-villages based on their country of origins. For example, we're going to build, a community, an eco-village for Lebanese Armenians. You can call it, Mesrop Mashtots, for example, eco-village. We're going to build another eco-village, for example, Noah's Ark eco-village that we're building right now for American Armenians, where, they're used to speaking English more so than anything else. And so it's going to be for the lifestyle for, the people who were born and raised in North America. And then we're going to have an eco-village for French Armenians, for Spanish Armenians, for Russian Armenians. People in Russia, Armenians in Russia, they speak mostly Russian, if you haven't noticed. And so when they come to Armenia, everything is also different from them. So we're going to accommodate and create these eco-villages that would feel most productive in. And this is the only way to be able to accommodate millions and millions of Armenians moving to Armenia from other countries. Folks, there is no other way. You can't just dump them in one bucket and expect them to perform or stay in Armenia. It's just not possible. Ain't gonna happen, folks. This is why we're gonna have this different approach. What else we're going to do? We're going to bring Western tourists from the English-speaking countries, from the United States, from Canada, from all other English-speaking countries as pilgrims. That's right. We're going to have religious tourism go through its awakening stage, folks. I'm going to come back to awakening here in just a minute. We're going to talk about the Noetic Light, Agape love, and we're going to talk about money as an illusion, and we're going to talk about how we never die. We're going to talk about praying every hour on the hour for the well-being and peace of all human beings on the face of the earth. And whenever you see an ambulance, please pray for those who are being taken care of by the paramedics. When you pray for someone, the angels of God are being dispatched to assist that very person. If you have faith, it actually works. So if you see an ambulance, pray for that individual who is in distress, who needs help, who needs our prayers. Please do so every time you see an ambulance, and you will be rewarded 100-fold in this life and in the afterlife as well. So let's discuss our bunkers. We're building a city under Yerevan at the depth of 235 meters that will accommodate up to 144,000 faithful. So our goal, folks, is to unite all our 17 million Armenians, 2.6 billion Christians, our fellow Christian brothers and sisters, and also we're going to send our message out into the world of 8.5 billion human beings on planet Earth. And if we can even save a single soul attracted to the gospel of Jesus the Christ, we're doing our job. But we're doing it slightly differently, folks. We're going through an awakening, like the Satori experience that you saw at the beginning of our video. Satori is a Japanese concept of an instant awakening, and that is precisely what we're going to be introducing to our audience. We're going to be introducing to our Christian brothers and sisters, to spiritual seekers, to Muslims, to those who recite Hare Krishna mantras every day, those who read Bhagavad Gita, the Book of the Dead, to any spiritual seeker out there who wants to learn how to walk on water, heal the sick, cast out demons, and raise the dead. That's right, folks. I'm going to bring up on the screen the passage from the Bible where Jesus said, the same things that I have done, you will do also, even greater things. He said even greater things we should be able to do. But can you walk on water? Can you heal the sick? Can you cast out demons? Can you raise the dead? If you can't, the answer to that is, well, why not? Can you answer the question first, folks? The answer to that is very simple. You haven't seen the methodology, and this is precisely what we're going to show you. This is why I purchased a special GoPro camera and attached my GoPro camera to my forehead so you can see it from my vantage point. Wherever I'm seeing, you're seeing it on your screens right now. It's an ancient 3,000-year-old Agape meditation. Yes, folks, the Sermon on the Mount is approximately 3,500 years old. Jesus' words they come from other masters, such as Zoroaster. So approximately 1,500 years before Christ, or maybe 1,000 years before Christ, when Zoroaster was on this planet, he was speaking the same language of kindness and agape love. Just in a different language, using slightly different words, but the message is the same. The core message is exactly the same. By the way, he's initiated the term dev. Dev is the Armenian word for demon, and it's actually dev in other 40 languages. It has the same meaning. But diva in Sanskrit, dev meaning demon, he reclassified thousands of gods into being, one creator and thousands of demons. This is his approach. His spirit of discernment told him that the majority of those so-called ancient gods that were presented as gods that ruled the earth were demons. He's the father of the very first monotheistic religion. It was not the Hebrews, folks. It was Zoroaster, or Zoroaster, as he's known to the Persian people in the Persian language. So let's talk about the awakening, folks. Money is an illusion. I studied money in college. That was my major, economics. And as a freshman in college, I was 17 years old. I visited 12 central banks, folks, 12 branches. So I know inside out the operation, how they make money, folks. They don't print money physically. They actually do it digitally using mainframe computers. In the United States, for example, they started this in the 1960s, but they've officially detethered the US dollar from all precious metals in 1971 on August the 15th, which was a Sunday, when President Richard Nixon read that little declaration, little piece of paper that he said, we're going to protect the US dollar against the speculators, foreign traders. All that meant was the US dollar was no longer, the country defaulted on its debts. It was just a nice way of putting it. So on Monday, the following day, which was the 16th of August of 1971, the US dollar was no longer supported or tethered or backed by any precious metals such as gold or silver, and it became what is known as fiat currency. Fiat, folks, is a Latin term, and when translated into English simply means taken by faith. Literally, that's what it means. So if you believe in the dollar, that it has some value, then it has some value. If you don't, it's just a piece of paper. And the US dollar has been losing its value tremendously over the past 10 years. Let's focus on tourism, folks. We're going to bring Western tourists to Armenia so that they'll help us promote Armenia and put it on a global map. We're going to bring millions and millions we're going to spend $40 million annually on advertising on all social media platforms. And, because we have Holy Noah, we can see Mount Ararat from almost anywhere in Armenia. And we're going to take them to a new site that was recently discovered by Armenia's chief archaeologist, Dr. Jacob Simonyan. On November the 17th of 2025, Anno Domini, he was called into a peculiar site where they were building a science center just outside of Yerevan, the capital city of Armenia. Tatev Harapetyan, who was an architect engaged for that project, noticed that they discovered some kind of a Erebuni-style fortress made out of ancient rock. So she called the Institute of Archaeology, she talked to Dr. Simonyan, and she told him that essentially they've discovered an unusual circular site. And she wanted to get his okay to bulldoze it down, and he said, absolutely not, I'm on my way, stay out of it, because it could be a rare discovery. And indeed it was, folks. This is a 12,000-year-old pre-Neolithic discovery of an ancient settlement. You could see the altars and the chairs and all kinds of utensils. They found some obsidian knives and obsidian hammers, obsidian, prehistoric knives that are very sharp. They're made out of solidified lava. That's what obsidian rock is. And what else did they find, folks? They have found scrapers, skin scrapers that were used by, prehistoric men and 12,000 years ago. When they killed a woolly mammoth, they would skin them and they would wear those skins later on. That was the ancient version of a down jacket, their version of the woolly mammoth jacket 12,000 years ago. So this is the discovery just outside of Yerevan, a 12,000-year-old site that we're going to bring lots of tourists to. It's quite remarkable, the oldest site on Earth. And of course, you may have heard about this another discovery that was found on the Muna Island in Indonesia, which is a 68,000-year-old discovery inside a cave of a painting. That's right, folks. A primitive caveman painted his own hand. It's a stencil, it's a hand stencil with some ochre paint, ochre powder, basically. All it is just the soil sample that was picked up from the soil found in the cave, and he blew on it, and it's basically solidified on the wall of the cave. And we see it today, 68,000 years later. So as you can see, we don't have any 68,000-year-old caves in Armenia, but maybe there are to be discovered. At least we have a 12,000-year-old site where we could bring all of our tourists to. That will be a really incredible attraction on top of all the other ancient sites, church sites, and Echmiadzin and Lake Savan, and all other remarkable sites that will put Armenia on a global map. So the Noetic Light, folks, this is something, the most important concept is Noetic Light. What is it? Noetic Light is the uncreated light. It's the frequency of God, if you will. You know, you hear me talk a lot about frequency of God. Because God is spirit without any physicality, is the only way to understand God is to get on His frequency. And Noetic Light is the brightest light in the universe that shines within us. All of us, inside of us, our souls have the Noetic Light, which is part of our Agape love that emanates from our spirits, which are essentially miniature sparks of God. And so by being kind to other people and animals, we express Agape love and we shine like the brightest stars in the universe. And that's the Noetic Light that you will be able to see once you develop a spirit of discernment to a certain degree, where you will be able to see that light. It's not the aura, folks. It's different from auras. Auras is just simply the biomagnetic field around our bodies. The Noetic Light is the uncreated light of God. It's the essence of God manifested inside of our souls. It's not the aura, it's the presence of God's Spirit. If you will, the Holy Spirit in its physical manifestation, when it's, the Mount Tabor, the transfiguration experience, when the disciples saw Jesus transfigure in front of them. That was Noetic Light, folks. This is the uncreated light of God. And all of us, we have that capacity. We're going to teach you how to reach that point through Agape meditation that is 3,000 years old. So what you do if you live in a city, you go to a city park. As you can see on your screen, you put your left hand on the tree without anybody being around you. You cannot have any people or animals or cars. You have to be by yourself in a secluded environment, or else it's not going to work. You have to turn off your phones, your gadgets, none of that, folks, none. You cannot bring the phones with you. You have to be just you and Mother Nature. You put your left hand on the tree and you just focus on the tree. It's alive and it communicates to you. You just have to tune into its frequency. Spend about half an hour every day, and then you'll be able to understand its language. And then once you get to that phase, with your right hand, as you begin to kind of move around, your right hand will create wind gusts up to 30 miles an hour. And that will be your confirmation that you have arrived, that Mother Nature cooperates with you. So as you put your hand down, the wind will dissipate. As you move your hand up in that sort of a swirling motion, you'll see that the winds will pick up again. You put your hand down, the winds will die down. And so that will be your confirmation that you can move on to the next phase. And the next phase is to be able to get on the frequency of God. And that will teach you how to do that. This is your way, your introduction, how Jesus turned water into wine, how he walked on water, how he healed the sick, cast out demons, how he raised the dead. All of that you will be able to learn if you have the desire to do so. We're not going to twist your arm, only if you wish to learn how it's done. Folks, we're going to bring retired American Armenian diplomats. We're going to bring them out of retirement so they could help reestablish Armenia on a global scale. We have one American Armenian diplomat who met Anastas Mikoyan in 1959 when he came to the United States on an official visit. Now imagine shaking hands with Anastas Mikoyan and still being active and sharp. That is a world-class skill, negotiation skill. He's beyond being an X-ray machine. He's beyond being a walking encyclopedia. He is so wise, he's so sharp, he's like, remember I mentioned at the beginning of our video, he's just like Dr. Hannibal Lecter in terms of his X-ray skills, his ability to predict the future, his ability to be as wise as serpents, as harmless as doves. This is what Jesus Christ told us to be. We must be as wise as serpents and as harmless as doves. And most of us, unfortunately, are not on that level yet. And we're going to teach you how to get on that level. Because Dr. Hannibal Lecter was a deadly man if you try to cross him. And that's the type of reputation we should have in the world. So people will be afraid to cross us, but they will know that we're very kind and God-loving people. But they'll be afraid to even think about crossing into our territory or doing any harm to us or to our people or to our country. That's the reputation we're going to have. New Armenia, with $500 billion in annual GDP, with high tech, with 17 million people being part of a group, with 2.6 billion Christians wanting to come to Armenia as the cradle of civilization, as the first country that accepted Christianity in 301 Anno Domini. I'm addressing all of our 17 million Armenian brothers and sisters. I'm addressing 2.6 billion fellow Christians. I'm addressing planet Earth, 8.5 billion people. If you're hearing this message, that means it's not by accident. That means there is a cosmic reason. This is your call to awaken. Our purpose is to turn Armenia into a global cultural and spiritual center. The human brain retains about 1% of what it takes in. So unless you listen to this message over and over again, tomorrow you hardly remember anything that I said today. So I highly encourage you to replay this message over and over again. Unless you'll replay this message over and over again, by tomorrow you probably won't remember anything that you've heard today. And so at this point, I'd like to invite all of you, all Armenians, to join our family. And I'd like to also invite all of our Christian brothers and sisters around the world to also join our family at www.myarmenianfamily.com. You can send us your resume if you want to come to Armenia. We'd be happy to facilitate your relocation to Armenia. If you're a scientist, if you're an engineer that will meet our qualifications, we'll find you a job, we'll pay your salary, we'll give you a house, we'll give you an apartment, we'll give you a car, we'll give you a chauffeur if you need to be driven around Armenia, driven around Yerevan. But as long as you can contribute in a useful way to the well-being of the Republic of Armenia, we're going to accommodate all your needs. So write to us. Go to our website, myarmenianfamily.com, fill out the contact form, send us a CV or resume, and we'll respond very promptly. Our team will respond to you and we'll tell you what the next steps will be. If you are not Armenian, but you would like to move to Armenia because you like our traditional family values, you like the way we treat people, you like being close to Noah's Ark, on top of Mount Ararat that you'll be able to see from many places where you'll choose to live in Armenia, whether in Yerevan or other parts of Armenia, feel free to do the same. Contact us. Send us your resume, send us your description of who you are, how old you are, where your family is at, and why you'd like to move to Armenia, and we'll be happy to respond and accommodate your request. Our website is www.myarmenianfamily.com. Now, as far as your support, many of you have asked how you could support our cause, our mission. On our website, you could click on the link that says, support us with your agape love. You'll be taken to a secure place, and we ask you to become in that case, if you're interested in supporting us, we ask you to become our monthly supporter. And this way, we'll feel your agape love, and we'll pray for you daily. Be sure to put, when you see that window open up, be sure to put a brief description of where you are, where you're located, and what brought your attention. If you're an Armenian, if you're not Armenian, if you're just a Christian, if you're just a spiritual seeker who would like to come to Armenia one of these days and possibly relocate to Armenia, just let us know about your goals, about your vision, about where you see yourself in the next 5 years. And if you'd like to be part of our Noah's Ark community, Eco-Village, our community will be based on above ground and then below ground at the depth of 235 meters. In case of a global nuclear collapse, nuclear war, we should be able to accommodate up to 144,000 inhabitants. At this point, I'd like to thank you for your time, for spending your precious, precious time with us. We are one big spiritual family. We're 2.6 billion strong. That's the total number of Christians on planet Earth. And we're also 17 million strong. I'm referring to our Armenian brothers and sisters. Overall, folks, I highly recommend to all of our Armenian brothers and sisters that you switch to using English. Why? Because more people would be able to understand what you're saying, especially if you have a YouTube channel, if you project in the message for the entire world to hear your message. There are 8.5 billion people, and most of them understand English. So I highly, highly recommend that you start using English more often than Armenian. It will help you promote the message, and all of us will benefit tremendously from that, because not too many people understand Armenian, but almost 8.5 billion people speak or understand English. Folks, as a closing remark, I'd like to say happiness comes from within, because money is an illusion. It has no bearing in the real world, folks. It's just a complete brainwashing operation. It's an indoctrination, especially in the capitalist systems. Everything is not measured by money. Happiness, folks, even if you have a stick of butter and some saltine crackers, you could be happy. You could be truly happy if you're on the frequency of God, if you know what Agape love is, if you've ever experienced Agape love, and you can see Noetic Light. Folks, you don't need anything else. With just a few crackers and some butter, you could be truly happy. I'm being very honest with you. You don't need money. Money allows us to do many things, but you have to be absolutely neutral towards money to be able to not be corrupted by it. And if you don't have that strength, then you should stay away from money, folks. You should be happy if you have, again, some crackers on your plate and some butter to put it on your crackers. True happiness, folks, is the most precious thing that we could ever experience. We're going to share with you more about what it is. So our primary message is how to increase our faith. The core message of our organization is to increase our faith so that we'll be able to walk on water, heal the sick, cast out demons, and raise the dead, just like the disciples of Jesus the Christ 2,000 years ago were able to do. This is our main mission. In order to achieve that, we need to learn the methodology. We need to learn the Agape meditation that's about 3,000 years old. And that's what we'll be sharing with you. So we'll be one big family, helping each other and building a new society that will be corruption-free, super educated. The economy will be in tip-top shape. We'll have plenty of jobs, well-paying jobs, and we'll be super secure inside the Republic of Armenia with our neighbors. When I say secure, Armenia is already very secure, very low crime. But with our neighbors, I'm meaning specifically Azerbaijan and Turkey, that closure must happen, folks. Let me just address that just real quickly, folks. Let me address Azerbaijan and Turkey. As Armenians, as Christians, we walk with God, but we need closure. This is why we keep having these issues with Azerbaijan and with Turkey. Turkey and Azerbaijan have an aggressive posture, and in order for us to change and have better relations with our neighbors, Turkey must admit to what was done to Armenians in 1915. Turkey must pay reparations. This is just the only way to say we're sorry, and it will never happen again. Otherwise, Erdogan, what are you going to do when your physical heart will stop beating? You know you're going to meet the Maker one of these days, very soon. Your life was spared a few years ago during an attempted coup d'etat. What have you learned, Erdogan? So why don't you step up to the plate, be a man, and announce to the world that Turkey officially recognizes Armenian genocide. You apologize, you repent of it, and we're going to build a new relationship between Armenia and Turkey. That's the way it should be done, because, when your heart will stop beating, it will be too late, Erdogan, to do anything. It will be too late. And as a man to man, let me just tell you, you'll be a much, much bigger man. Don't listen to what the demons are whispering into your ears. Just do the right thing. Acknowledge what was done to Armenians by your forefathers. Pay reparations, and we'll have a new relationship. That way, when you have your earthquake, we're going to come to your aid. We would like to come to your aid if, God forbid, there'll be an earthquake in Turkey to assist the civilians of Turkey. I have personally nothing against Turkish people or Azerbaijanis. Nothing. It's the political climate that is absolutely unacceptable. When I watch on YouTube some wonderful historians who talk about Armenian genocide, Turkish historians, Azerbaijani historians who talk about how we could rebuild the relationship between Azerbaijan and Armenia, between Turkey and Armenia. And these are intelligent, wonderful human beings, very kind. So I have nothing against Azerbaijani people. I have nothing against Turkish people. But we have to address this climate of hatred that is formulated at the very top of Azerbaijan and Turkey. That must change. And this is why we're having this dialogue. Erdogan, be a big man. Do what's right. You know in your heart what you need to do. You're a smart man. You have tremendous experience. Just don't allow the demons to mislead you and put you on a path of destruction, on the road to hell. Don't listen to the demons. Listen to the Spirit of God that is speaking to you right now through me. And this will be a monumental change for Armenia and Turkey to celebrate if you can admit to the wrongdoing that was done to the Armenian people in 1915. That will be a moment that the angels of God will be rejoicing in heaven. Because let me tell you, genocide made the angels cry. I'll say it again. The Armenian genocide made the angels cry in heaven. And that is something you cannot get away from. So let's make it right so we can celebrate a new era of relationship. And I believe in miracles. I believe that we should be able to have good neighborly relations between Turkey and Armenia and Azerbaijan and Armenia. On this note, I'd like to say a few parting words. And I also would like to mention a few words about Lake Sevan. We have plans to bring in the best engineering firm, North American engineering firm, to build a biological wastewater treatment plant to address the algal bloom that happens in the summer month. Lake Sevan is our most precious alpine lake that we have to preserve. And we cannot allow untreated waste to be dumped into Lake Sevan. So we have already secured $300 million to build a top-notch biological wastewater treatment plant. We just need to move along and negotiate the terms with the Republic of Armenia and get it done, folks. We have to get it done. On this note, I'd like to thank all of you for your time, for your attention, and I want to wish you all the best. I want to wish you peace in your heart. I want to wish you a desire to be closer to God, to find God, and that's what we will help you do here with our messages. You know, I just got off the phone. I spoke for a few hours with a man in Vanadzor, Armenia. He's a brilliant mathematician that could be potentially contributed to our organization. And I shared with him all these spiritual principles, and he was shaken to the core of his heart. He's never heard these terms before, Noetic Light, Agape love. But he felt the divine in my words. He felt the divine presence, the energy of God. I could tell that his soul was shaken to the core in a good way. And that's an indication that we just have to introduce the message of spiritual awakening to all people that we meet on a daily basis. And God will decide what to do with that individual. It's not up to us to decide. There is so much more that I'd like to share with you, but in the interest of time, I'll just go over a few more things and I'm going to wrap it up. We come here for only about 5 minutes in the eyes of eternity, for a brief moment, and then we depart as soon as our physical hearts will stop beating. We come from an eternal place We stay in this temporal place for just a few decades, a few years, a few days, and then we depart. And nobody really knows where we come from, who we are, where we're going, because everything is a form of temporary programming, temporary information, and temporary indoctrination. Have you ever considered when Canada geese fly over from Canada into the United States? They don't think about borders. They don't see borders. They don't have to stop and show their passports. That would be absolutely nonsensical. And yet we make these rules for ourselves. We have to stop, show our passports, prove our nationality with these imaginary borders. Why is that? So who are we? Who created us? Where do we come from? Why do we have these biomechanical transport units that transport our eternal souls? These are the questions that we should be asking and addressing. And now I'd like to mention a remarkable man from Artsakh, from Nagorno-Karabakh, who was forced to leave his homeland in September of 2023, Anno Domini. And when he came to Yerevan, Armenia, instead of focusing on negativity about Azerbaijani army forcing them to leave their homeland, he focuses on making wooden toys for children. He only projects kindness into the world. He's very positive despite the circumstances. His name is Karen Minasyan, and you're seeing him on your screen right now. Folks, I just saw this episode on the news, on Hike Media news channel, reported by Arpine Dadorian, who is always finding these positive stories to report about. So Karen Minasyan, and by the way, that's the way you pronounce it. It's not Karen, but Karen. There is no Karen in Armenian, so it's only Karen. It's a man's name, Karen. So Karen is retired, and he couldn't bring any of his equipment from Artsakh. So he was forced to, he didn't say in this episode, but I think he may have taken a loan to buy the equipment to start his own new woodcrafting shop with all the needed equipment. But as you can see, he makes these beautiful, beautiful, stunning wooden little elephants, very kind bunnies with long ears. And that sort of projects kindness. That projects his positive energy, that he's trying to not reminisce about the past. And if you heard his voice, he is very humble. He's a humble man full of kindness and humility. That's what describes him. So, and the reason why I bring this up, folks, because nobody in the English-speaking world would probably ever hear about Karen Minasyan, who now lives in Yerevan, Armenia. And I was so moved by this story, I decided to kind of share it with you in English so the world would know about the true spirit of an Armenian man, of most Armenian people, that we have kindness in our hearts. Despite these circumstances, despite these tragic events, despite ethnic cleansing, despite genocides, despite, this was forceful removal from his homeland, folks, where he grew up. And despite all that, he projects kindness and love, agape love. That's the Armenian spirit. And by the way, he named his brand, shall we call it that, he named his brand Play Artsakh. Haha Artsakh is the name of his brand. And folks, a deeper, more accurate translation would be as follows. Literally, it means play Artsakh, but what Karen meant is he tried to communicate with the world that despite what happened to them in 2023, despite them having to leave their homeland, Artsakh continues to live and Artsakh continues to play. That's the fuller meaning or the fuller translation into English. Artsakh continues to live and continues to play. This would be the best way to translate the name of his brand. Haha Artsakh. And just like Karen Minasyan, Catherine Dougherty, also known as Catherine de Hook Dougherty from her previous marriage, started the Madonna House in Canada. Now let me just tell you a few things about Catherine because her story is very unique. So she was born in 1896 Anno Domini in the Russian Empire, in the city of Nizhny Novgorod. And so when the 1917 October Bolshevik Revolution happened in the Russian Empire, she was already married for about 6 years, and she decided to leave the Russian Empire with her husband for Finland, where they spent a year, and then they moved to England, and then they moved to Canada finally. So Catherine de Hook, who later became Dougherty, she is a remarkably spiritual woman, remarkably brave, remarkably courageous woman. Because, folks, back in those days, women had not only very little say, they were like property. Much like in the United States, women could not even start a business without the signature of the husband or the father until 1975. That's right, in the United States of America, women could not start a business without their husband's signature or their father's signature up until 1975. Imagine living in 1896 Russian Empire. Her role was very limited, and yet, despite that, she started the Friendship House, where all people were welcome of all races. And she started them in Chicago, in Toronto, in Harlem, folks. That's the part of New York City where it was highly segregated. This is remarkable, where she would welcome, the African people back in the day when they had signs posted upon every venue in New York City that said, whites only or colors keep out, something like that. So back in the day, she opened up these friendship houses where she would actually preach the gospel and would welcome all people of all races. That was a revolutionary idea. It was a revolutionary idea because she was a woman. It was a revolutionary idea because there was a segregation in place. But she overcame all those obstacles because she was essentially preaching the message of agape love, of unconditional love of God. And that's the kind of the uniqueness of Catherine's ministry. And then later she founded with her second husband, Eddie Dougherty, who was an American reporter. In May of 1947, they founded Madonna House Apostolate in Combermere, Canada. And so now the Madonna House is the conglomeration of everything that she's done before. This is where all, men and women are welcome, and they essentially created this wonderful community under the auspices of the Catholic Church. So that's why it's called an apostolate. But you can actually visit them if you wish. You can go there, you can spend, a week or two, and that will kind of refreshen your faith. It will put you on a new vector for your spiritual evolution. And that's what we're trying to do in Armenia as a whole. So the entire country of Armenia, we're trying to turn into the Madonna House, or the Finhorn Eco-Village, so to speak. That's right, folks. We're trying to change the entire country of Armenia to operate as one unit, as one spiritual dynamo. And so just like the Madonna House Apostolate and the Finhorn Eco-Village in Scotland, by the way, let me just tell you briefly, the Finhorn Eco-Village was started by Peter and Eileen Caddy from England. So they were driving in their minivan, or actually it's called the caravan over there. It was a camper, basically. They were driving in their camper across England, and they drove all the way into Scotland, and they drove as far as they could get, which was Finhorn Bay, and they decided to pitch their tent and start a commune or start an eco-village that they called Finhorn Eco-Village or Finhorn Foundation. So much like Finhorn Eco-Village and the Madonna House in Canada, we're trying to mobilize Armenia as a whole, as the entire country, to operate on this principle of inclusivity, that all Christians from around the world would love to visit and perhaps even move to Armenia to be part of our sort of a spiritual country, spiritual cradle, where the first Christian nation adopted Christianity, where Christianity was adopted by Armenia for the first time in 301 Anno Domini. And so, folks, the purpose of me mentioning to you Catherine Dougherty's mission is because she was a very, very brave, courageous woman. to do what she's done in the early 1900s. She came to Canada in 1920 Anno Domini. And in those days, folks, besides the segregation rules and everything else, women were just not able to do much at all, hardly, other than give birth to children and raise them. That's it. That was the role. So she was truly a very strong woman. You could see her speech on YouTube that she gave in 1979. Never mind her thick Russian accent, because she was born in the Russian Empire. You could see her vision. You could see the Spirit of God working through her. And that's what we're trying to implement in Armenia. The only difference between us and the Madonna House or the Finhorn Foundation, we're heavily invested into high technology, such as supercomputers, hypersonic drones, and other, very advanced technology, because all of us are engineers, mathematicians, and IT specialists. So we bring this cutting-edge technology, whereas Catherine was just a simple woman from Nizhny Novgorod, Russian Empire. But her critical points, a couple of points I'd like to highlight: the Pustynia experience, so the Pustynia term. Pustynia is a Russian word for desert. So the desert experience she was using in her ministry is the kind of the isolated 24 hours spent in prayer. That's why she has so many different little log cabins for so many guests that visit her ministry, her little campus in Canada, where you basically lock yourself up in a little log cabin and you spend the night or the whole day in prayer. Prayer and supplication while reading the scriptures, and you just basically, that was her approach to try to bring people closer to God, which is absolutely the right way to do it. We absolutely agree with that. We agree with that 100%. The only way to get to know God is in total silence and total isolation, not while you're watching the news, not while you're talking to your family members, and not while you're eating a fat burger from McDonald's. That will never get you close to God. In fact, you are being delusional if you think by watching the news and talking to your family and friends and trading jokes you can hear the voice of God. It will never happen, folks. So the Pustynia experience, or the sort of the isolation experience, we highly recommend. In fact, we recommend that you do that not for just one day, but maybe for a week, if you can. If you can isolate yourself for a week, that would be a much better experience for your spiritual growth. And if you ever get a chance to visit the Madonna House in Canada, you would be pleased to talk to Father David Linder, who is the priest there. He's the director of all the priests, and he kind of runs that mission. Another very important term that Catherine was highlighting is unity among Christians, or the Russian word sabornost. So sabornost, or unity among Christians, is a very key concept in her ministry, which we absolutely agree. That's why we're trying to unite 2.6 billion Christians around the world and 17 million Armenians scattered around the world into one cohesive unit. That's the unity we need, folks. That's what Catherine was also promoting in all of her messages, in all her books. And so, anyway, look her up online or on YouTube. You can watch her 1979 presentation. Incredibly strong woman with an incredibly powerful mission, guided by the Spirit of God. Just a few differences, obviously, because she comes from a different era that didn't even have computers back then when she was born. So obviously, we bring a much more updated message to you, a message of hope, agape love, Christian unity, and also high technology that we should use for the benefit of the kingdom of God. Our Noah's Ark eco-village in Armenia, folks, combines everything into one. High technology, the spiritual greenhouse kind of an experience of the Madonna House, and the Finhorn Foundation's unification strategy, where all are united to worship God, to be one, and to find our true purpose and mission in life, and to fulfill it, of course. So we're all in one. We're sort of the best, the latest conglomeration of all the other eco-villages and Christian missions of the past. We're so underdeveloped, folks. We're so under the benchmark of being spiritual creatures. Just like, there's a difference between animals and human beings, there's a significant difference between human beings and, let's say, the angelic realm. And we're trying to bridge that gap, folks. We're trying to evolve and develop. The human brain retains only about 1% of what it takes in. And because of our special methodology, Agape meditation, there is a way to develop both left and right hemisphere. So our brains could retain up to 80% of the information we take in. In the end times, knowledge will increase, the Bible says. Weltanschauung is what we're after, folks. Weltanschauung is a beautiful English word of German origin, which simply means a specific, certain worldview. Weltanschauung. I highly recommend that you adopt this word if you haven't already. It's a certain perspective of the world that's been filtered by your own filter. So you don't really trust the indoctrination, the propaganda, the brainwashing that you see on TV and on social media. You have your own way of filtering this information. Folks, we have approximately $3.2 billion to fund all of our projects. Of that, approximately $650 million has been already used for our projects. As soon as we run out of this money, we'll actually get more funding for all of our projects. But if you'd like to join us, if you'd like to support our mission, support our cause, you could go to our website, myarmenianfamily.com, and become our monthly supporter. And we would very much appreciate that, and we'll pray for you daily. Again, our website is myarmenianfamily.com, and you can click on the link that says support us with your agape love. Some people ask about whether demons are real or if this is all mythology. And I'm here to tell you they're very real. Divorce, murder, genocide, wars, homicide are all caused by demons. Now, they have their own hierarchy. If I were to list all the things that they cause, I would be here for days and days. But just to name a few things: rapes, mass shootings, abortions. By the way, abortions are a form of human sacrifice. Child molestation and abuse, car accidents, drug overdoses, shootings, epidemics, riots, murder, drunkenness, greed, lust, storms, fires, fear and anxiety, infertility, nightmares, pride, and much, much more is caused by the fallen angels or demons. The word comes from an ancient Vedic Sanskrit word of deva that was adopted by the Avestan language and became dev, which was adopted by the Armenians. That's the Armenian word for demon, dev. So these are hyperdimensional, multidimensional beings that are invisible to the physical eye. Even though they're invisible, once you develop the spirit of discernment, you should be able to pick up on their presence. You should be able to pick up on their schemes. And we're going to share with you how they operate. So you'll be armed to the teeth with spiritual weapons, so to speak. Do you remember when Jesus confronted the Jewish leaders in the synagogue in Jerusalem? He pointed his finger at them, at the Sanhedrin, at the Sadducees and Pharisees, and he said, "Why can't you understand my language? Because you belong to your father, the devil." And this has been sort of the pivotal passage in the scriptures about why would Jesus be so categorical that the Jews belong to the devil, or specifically those Jews that he was talking to at that time, the Sadducees and the Pharisees. You see, Jesus belonged to a third fraction, the Essenes. And the Essenes were the ascetics. In other words, they lived in caves, they needed very little food, they lived in a communal setting, and they shared all of their resources equally. So the Sermon on the Mount, it comes from the Essenes, and they learned it from Zoroaster about 1,000 years before Christ was on our planet. If I were to quote Rabbi Israel Wise, who is part of the Neturei Karta organization, according to Rabbi Israel Wise, who is an ultra-Orthodox Jew, he claims that their organization, their group, is the only true remnant of the Jewish people remaining on planet Earth, because the rest of the people who claim to be Jews are not. They're the gangsters, they're the criminals who pretend to be Jews just to gain access to political power and money. Rabbi Israel Wise, specifically referring to Benjamin Netanyahu and the State of Israel. According to Noetic Light, the State of Israel is an illegal occupation of Palestinian lands, illegal, obviously, murder of 10,000 Palestinians in 1948, and an illegal expulsion of 750,000 Palestinians from their homeland. Something very similar to what happened to Armenians in Artsakh. So Rabbi Wise is a very brave man. What they do, folks, is they demonstrate and they protest against the State of Israel every single day in front of the United Nations office building, in front of the Knesset in Israel, and globally in London in front of, important governmental offices. They're often beaten and spat at and mistreated and arrested, but they never stop. And what they claim, folks, is that Benjamin Netanyahu, which is actually verified information, number one, they're all atheists. The Netanyahu family is really not their name. They came to Palestine and they changed their names. It used to be Milikowski. Milikowski is a Polish name. They came from Poland. And folks, they were just opportunists. Similar story with David Ben-Gurion, the founding father of Israel. His real name is Grun. Grun spelled, as you can see on your screen, with an umlaut sound, with two dots above the U. That's umlaut. It's a German last name. So he's German, folks. He's not Jewish. And he does not believe in God. He does not believe in the Bible, folks. They're making fun of all the Christians and all the believers. That's why Rabbi Israel Wise considers them to be the most dangerous criminals on the face of the earth. They're imposters. They're not real Jews. The real Jews are the ones who pray to God, they walk with God, and they would never kill or expel somebody from their homeland by stealing their lands, folks. These are the words of Rabbi Israel Wise of Noetic Light. By the way, let me translate this for you in English. This is a very important piece of information. So even if you spoke Hebrew, modern Hebrew, you may not know what that means because it's a form of ancient Babylonian Aramaic. Yes, indeed, it's a dialect of Babylonian Aramaic from 3,000 years ago. So what Noetic Light means, it's an organization, and the phrase comes from Jerusalem Talmud, referencing Psalm 127, verse 1. That it talks about, well, first of all, let me translate it. It means guardians of the city. It actually references Psalm 127:1, where the question is raised, so who is really guarding the city? Is it the army, the armed guards, or is it the Lord, God Almighty? If you don't have the protection from above, all your earthly protection is absolutely useless. And it's a very valid question to ask. You have to sometimes sit down and consider, do you trust your own protection, or do you trust the protection from above? This is a question for you to ask yourself. But going back to Rabbi Israel Wise, according to him, these so-called Jews are not Jews, they're imposters, they're criminals, they're the most violent gangsters that just gotten together, and they're raping people, they're killing innocent Palestinians right now with American bombs, 3,000-pound bombs dropped from American airplanes, paid for by the American taxpayers. And he specifically names Benjamin Netanyahu as the devil-worshipping Antichrist. He says, just think about it. He is a very well-spoken individual. And he says, how could you possibly justify expelling someone or killing someone or brutally murdering someone for the sake of stealing their lands? That's not only not biblical, it's not human. That's why he calls them demon-possessed, demon-controlled, satanic Antichrist like biomass and two legs. He's referring to Benjamin Netanyahu and all of that criminal organization in the so-called State of Israel. These are the words of Israel Wise. He is part of Noetic Light International. That's an ultra-Orthodox group that claims that the State of Israel is illegal and it must be dismantled because only God will bring forth Israel according to their writings. You can't manually, forcefully put it together. That's why they're waiting for the Messiah. That's Israel wise. Very brave man. We should have more Jews like that. He's a true Jewish person, folks. You should support him if you're a person of God who follows God. Another very interesting individual that I'd like to mention of Jewish ancestry, his name is Dr. Norman Finkelstein. He was a professor of history at Hunter College in New York City. He's a Jewish-American professor of history, and both of his parents, his mother and his father, went through the Nazi concentration camps, so-called concentration camps. Folks, what they were are actually labor camps. This is where not only Jews, but other ethnic groups were employed or used to work for the German army, for the German military-industrial complex. They were highly skilled workers that produced military gear. And since his parents could tell him stories, him growing up, now he raised this question of why would this state of Israel position this sort of a Holocaust story in such a way that you could not even question it? And yet they killed Palestinians by the thousands, and nobody even pays attention to the Palestinians. And this is what he formulated, again, a very similar worldview about the fact that it's a business project, folks. It's gangsters, criminals who are in power of Israel. They're all atheists. They don't believe in God. They're not even Jews. They're all imposters because not a single religious person would justify killing another human being to steal their lands. So these imposters, they organized this Holocaust campaign just to milk the German government for money. Do you know how much they've milked the German government for? They siphoned off over $125 billion over the years. And out of that $125 billion, do you know how much was actually given to the surviving family members? Folks, take a guess. This is a dialogue, remember? About $40 million was given to the surviving family members. The rest disappeared. Folks, they collected $125 billion. They've distributed $40 million, roughly, to the so-called survivors of the Holocaust. That's a mafia scheme, according to Dr. Norman Finkelstein. I highly suggest you watch him on YouTube. He is just an incredibly brave Jewish man, Jewish historian, highly educated, very brave. That's his opinion, that's his projection, that everything is crooked, everything is not real. Those people are not real Jews. Those people are criminals. They're gangsters. They're worse than Al Capone. They're worse than, much worse than Hitler, folks. These are the most lethal, dangerous people, Antichrist in power right now in Israel. Who are truly Jewish people? The Jewish people are just like Rabbi Israel Wise, who prays and cries with the Palestinians who are being killed by the thousands every day. He says they should be stopped immediately. That's why he is protesting in front of the White House, in front of the United Nations building, in front of the Knesset building in Israel. They are protesting, folks. They're trying to shut down the state of Israel. And they have a YouTube channel, and their channel was hacked several times. Their website was hacked constantly. I mean, so many times it's not even funny. But please check them out, both Professor Dr. Norman Finkelstein and Rabbi Israel Wise, or simply just type in Noetic Light and you'll find their channel on YouTube. They upload new video every single day from every single one of our demonstration in London and New York City and Tel Aviv, and around the world also. They're very just bravest people around the world. And this is their opinion, folks. They have the right to say something about the Jewish people, Jewish faith. And according to them, they're just a small number of truly Jewish people. The rest are imposters. The rest are criminals. The rest are gangsters who pretend to be Jewish, but they're not. This is why Jesus, looking at the Sanhedrin, looking at the Pharisees and the Sadducees, he pointed his finger at them and plainly spoke. He says, "Why can't you understand my language? Because you belong to your father, the devil." And every time he speaks of the lies and deception, because it's nature, folks. I'm going to bring it up on the screen so you can see it. This is why Jesus accused them, and he called them, the Jews, he called them the children of the devil, folks. Because even 2,000 years ago, there was the same situation. Everybody's who's a criminal, they try to be an opportunist and climb into the position of power. Even religious power, folks. Yes, yes, yes. The fact that they wear a beard and they're part of the Sanhedrin doesn't mean that they're righteous Jews, folks. It's on the contrary. They're the most corrupt, violent group of people. They killed him. The Jews killed Jesus the Christ, the Son of God, the bearer of light. And that is happening today to the Palestinian people, folks. I could not watch on television anymore after, the number of innocent Palestinian civilians got up to about 5,000 people that were killed by the so-called Israeli army, folks. American planes, American-funded war by the American taxpayers, killing innocent women and children. Now, even if one person is dead, folks, on the street because of some car accident, and we feel very sensitized to that loss, can you picture right now, at the time of this recording, there are over 77,000 dead, corpses piling up. Can you picture 77,000 corpses piling up one upon another of dead mothers and daughters and little sons and the elderly, Palestinian civilians? 77,000 dead because of this one antichrist who is in power, who's a criminal, who's wanted for $6 billion of embezzlement money. This is why Rabbi Israel Wise calls them all imposters, criminals, worse than Al Capone, worse than the devil themselves. Devils incarnate, that's what they are, those people in power, folks. 2,000 years ago, Jesus called them the children of the devil. And today, Rabbi Israel Wise calls them all imposters and children of the devil because of what they do, folks. We have to clearly see that. There is no kind person who would ever wish anything evil upon another person, much less to take their lives. And these people just easily flip a switch. You turn on, push on a button, and the bombs are flying on people's homes. There's the war in Iran. And let's just talk a little bit about that, folks. The prophetic message. So we have access to our supercomputers. Everything is mathematical. Everything is tied to the past, present, and future. Could be represented using mathematical formula, mathematical data. Everything is encoded, folks. And only a supercomputer could decode it. So we need approximately 250 billion units or tokens to load into our computer of data points, basically. And it analyzes it using a certain algorithm, and it could actually forecast future events. You heard me right. It's a special program, folks. It's not some silly large language model that just talks to you in a funny way. No, this is not ChatGPT, folks. This is not Grok. This is not Copilot. This is a very powerful supercomputer algorithm. And we tied them up in a daisy chain so they can talk to each other and just give us the answers. So in 1999, I created a video, and also I did so in the year 2000. On March the 4th, 2000, I might even play just a snippet of it on the screen for you. But in the year 2000, I recorded myself talking to you in a similar way, except back then we had older technology, Sony camcorder, video cameras had these little small, I believe they're called something, digital 8 tapes, folks, these small video cassette tapes. And so anyway, on the older equipment, I recorded a message about future events that were predicted, and most of them have already materialized. For example, in my March the 4th, 2000 video, I talked about the upcoming September 11th attacks. I talked about the pandemic that I called the virus that originated in 1942 island of a Scottish island that was actually developed. The virus was developed by the British military. And this virus spread, and they decided not to use, it was World War II, and they decided not to use that virus against the German army, the German troops, because it was too unstable, too violent. But that is a modified virus that will be used as a so-called the pandemic virus, folks. That's the tie. It's all artificial. It's all done by the children of the devil, of Satan. In that video, I also talked about Donald Trump becoming his first term in the White House, about Donald Trump's second term in the White House, by Donald Trump's assassination, about the war in Iran, about the second war in Iran, and about the nuclear weapons, and of course about the war in Ukraine. I named even the date that will start in February of 2022. And folks, the war in Iran and Ukraine, this is where the nuclear weapon will be used for the second time after Japan. If you recall, in August of 1945, the United States dropped 2 nuclear weapons on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, where 350,000 people were instantly killed by the bombs. We're going to have part 2 of nuclear weapons, folks, in this global conflict, because all of these activities are governed or ruled by demons, very high-ranking fallen angels of dark forces, basically. Fallen angels or demons. So when will the nuclear weapons be used, folks? It's very simple. In my video, I specifically state in 2026 all the way through 2027, at which point we will have to have a bunker to survive. This is why we're building a Noah's Ark eco-village above ground in Armenia and also below ground at the depth of 235 meters below the ground. It's been already built. Yeah, it took many decades to build it, but it's almost finished. So it will accommodate 144,000 inhabitants. And you're welcome to apply if you so choose on our website. You could become our neighbor and you could live with us in safety of Noah's Ark eco-village. So folks, it's just like in the days of Noah. Identical situation. The flood is coming, the nuclear war is coming, nobody listens. But those who do listen will be saved. This is why I'm recording this message, is to awaken those who need to be awakened, who has been predestined from the foundation of the world. Those who will perish, they will perish. But those who are meant to hear this message and be saved will be saved. This is why we call this the awakening, the Great Awakening. Folks, I also would like to mention an amazing American evangelist from Iowa who heard about the Armenian Genocide, who heard about the war in Artsakh, who heard about the 6,000 dead, and he decided with his wife to sell everything they have and move to Armenia to help the Armenian widows and orphans. That's right, they sold everything they had in Iowa and they moved to Armenia. His name is Joel Tenney. And Joel Tenney is actually my hero, folks. He is of Scottish descent. He's an American of Scottish descent, but he is just an incredibly spiritual individual who walks with God. Not just because he loves Armenia and he moved to Armenia, folks. That's just a small part of it. It's because he was praying to God about what he should be doing in his life. And God has opened his mind to focus on the orphans and widows of Armenia. So he looked it up and that's where he found out about the Armenian Genocide of 1915, about the war in Artsakh, about the earthquake of 1988 in Spitak and Leninakan. And he just was moved to the core of his being, and he told his wife that they needed to sell everything and move to Armenia. And his name again is Joel Tenney. You should follow him on social media. I don't know him, I just saw him on YouTube, folks. His story really moved me to the core. It's just incredible faith, folks. He has incredible faith. And he walks with God. And by the way, they have 6 children, folks. Can you imagine moving to another country with 6 children where you don't even speak the language? Now that's called faith, folks. And they sold everything in Iowa. A remarkable family, a remarkable man. He is truly a man of God. I wish we had more people like Joel. Joel, we love you as our Christian brother, and we wish you all the best. May God send his angels to guard you, protect you, and especially your wonderful large family. Take care, God bless you, and I hope to meet you someday in Armenia or some other place. There is so much more I wish to share with you and discuss, but there's simply not enough time. If I went through my video that I recorded in the year 2000 with all those events that I have forecast that they came true, it would take us 2 hours, folks. But in the interest of time, I'm simply going to say, just pray and fast. You should be fasting and in constant prayer. And once you develop the spirit of discernment through a daily Agape meditation practice, your spiritual eyes will open and you will be able to get similar information about future events, folks. It's just a gift that we get. Plus, we have access to our supercomputers that actually prepare those reports for us also, folks. That's an additional source of information. In the end times, knowledge will increase. Remember that phrase from the Bible? In the end times, knowledge will increase. And the teleportation was recorded 5 times in the Bible, especially with the Ethiopian eunuch. Remember the book of Acts? You could see that on your screen right now. But most importantly, our core message is how we can increase our faith so we could heal the sick, cast out demons, and raise the dead. Jesus said we should be able to do that, and we have Agape meditation to help us reach that level. Folks, I just want to wish you all the best. I want to share with you our Agape love. We love you very much eternally. We're only here for about 5 minutes, for a very brief moment in time, folks. In the eyes of eternity, it's not even a split second. We just come and we go. So let us be wise about every breath that we take on earth. Let us be wise about our time that we spend on this planet. We're so underdeveloped. We're so deprived of information. We're so clueless. We're so helpless without the help from the angelic force, without the help from our spiritual guardians. And yet, sometimes we're very prideful. You would think, being so vulnerable, being so fragile, we would be on our knees and praying constantly to God for protection. Very few people do, folks. Let us put away our pride. Let us pray for humility, meekness, and wisdom from God. Let us unite as one Christian family. So I'm addressing 17 million Armenians and 2.6 billion Christians around the world. Let us all unite into one coherent family of believers. And one last thank you I'd like to express to all of the Muslim and Arab people who have sheltered Armenian people and Armenian children during the 1915 Armenian Genocide. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. All those kind souls who showed compassion when they saw those little children that they would not have a chance to survive unless they were taken to safety. So God bless you. Thank you for what you've done. There are very kind Muslim people, very kind Arabs, very kind, non-Christians who showed mercy and kindness to Armenian people during the genocide, during the most horrific time in Armenian history. And I pray for all those kind souls and their descendants, so God will show mercy to you as well. Thank you. And now I'd like to conclude by saying we love you very much. Visit our website at myarmenianfamily.com. If you wish to support us, please do so on our website. Or you could click on the QR code on your screen right now. If you wish to write to us, if you're interested in moving to Armenia and you're an engineer or a business entrepreneur or a scientist, please send us your resume so we could better place you in Armenia, and our team will promptly respond. If you have any other questions, contact us on our website. We'll be happy to respond. On this note, God bless you. Take care, and we hope to see you at the very top. We love you very much. Folks, I almost forgot one last thing about the thousands of gods of Palestine at the time of Jesus and prior to that, about the name Yahweh. At the time of Abraham and Jesus, There were thousands upon thousands of different kinds of gods that were worshipped by various people, including the Jews. Zoroaster was the founding father of the first monotheistic religion. It was not the Jews, folks. They actually believed in multiple gods until they created their own god called Yahweh, which is a composite of Greek god Dionysus, Hephaestus, and a few other desert gods of the Mesopotamian region. You could research that, folks. You could research this topic and you'll find out. But I'll tell you this, I don't think that a creator of the universe would demand your penis, meaning circumcision. A creator of the universe who created kind animals and kind human beings would not force you or ask you to cut off your penis or to cut off your foreskin of your penis or your clitoris. No genital mutilation is needed to have a relationship with the creator of the universe. So I would like for you to investigate this, folks. Look into that. Do you really think that Yahweh is the creator of the universe? Or was it a demigod, a minor god of the Levantine region? Please look into that yourself, folks. I'm only pointing you to something you could find out on your own. So was Yahweh a creator of the universe, or was he a composite name that the Jews have created to worship? Just like they had Marduk, or Baal, or many other gods, thousands and thousands of other gods that were worshipped in their area. For example, Ashur was taken by the Assyrians at that time. That was their god. And even if you liked that god, you couldn't sort of like claim it and call it your own god because it belonged to the Assyrians at that time, thousands of years ago. In order to have your own god, you had to create a new god. And that's what the Hebrews did, folks. The creator of the universe, folks, I don't think would ask for a circumcision, for you to be circumcised, to bless you. This is a typical crazy talk. One last thing I'm going to mention, according to many psychiatrists in New York City, Jewish psychiatrists who walked away from the Judaic faith to become Zen Buddhists, they completely recant and deny the fact that this is normal behavior, folks. Meaning, in their professional opinion, they deem this cutting off the penis, the foreskin, and demanding all these sacrifices and death and the fixation on foreskins and penises and circumcision and covenants and killing the Amalekites and this and that. This is mental illness, folks. This is why hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Jewish psychiatrists are turning away from Judaism and they're becoming Zen Buddhists. Because they call it mental illness, bona fide mental illness that they diagnose and treat every day in their clinics, in their hospital rooms. So, according to hundreds of Jewish or formerly Jewish psychiatrists, all these stories that you read in the Bible about killing Amalekites, cutting off penises, remember how King Saul asked for more foreskins of those Philistines? Folks, what sort of a fixation is that? It's ridiculous, folks. It's ridiculous. The creator of the universe would not be asking you to cut off somebody's penis, folks, for a better covenant. Remember what happened to Abraham? He heard voices, folks, in his head. He couldn't describe the voices. The voices wouldn't tell him the names, who they belonged to. He just heard voices who told him to go to a different country. Folks, today, if somebody hears voices, that's a schizophrenic. That's a mentally ill patient. You call 911, they get picked up and they get institutionalized. But 2,500 years ago, that wasn't the case. They didn't have any mental hospitals. They didn't have any psychiatrists. This is why Abraham could be doing those things if he was even a real person. So you have to consider that. This is why hundreds and hundreds of Jewish or formerly Jewish psychiatrists are walking away from the Jewish faith and they become Zen Buddhists because it's healthier. It doesn't deal with this contrasting stories of killing some Amalekites, women and children and all this nonsense, folks. These are concocted stories according to these psychiatrists. These are concocted stories by severely mentally ill patients. which they didn't have any hospitals back then. So people, severely mentally ill people that had nothing else to do other than concoct stories, folks. That's very sad. These angry stories about killing Amalekites, cutting off penises or foreskins for better covenants, hearing voices, leaving your homeland. Folks, at that time, you could not even dream or dare to dream about leaving your father's house for safety reasons. You know, every male that was born at that time, they would live very close by for safety, security reasons, to provide for the safety, security of the clan, of the family. So when Abraham said, I'm leaving, folks, that was unheard of. That's like not possible. You would never do that. You don't just pick up your stuff and leave in those days. It was not possible. I mean, you could leave for a week for a business trip to do some trade. Then everybody knows you're going to be back. You don't just say, I heard voices and I'm leaving. Ta-ta for now. You don't say stuff like that, folks. And he did. And everybody thought they thought he was crazy. But in actuality, folks, according to hundreds and hundreds of formerly Jewish psychiatrists in New York City, they believe that this character of Abraham was severely schizophrenic. He was schizophrenic, he was mentally ill. It's like all symptoms are written there. His behavior is what they treat, what they diagnose and treat every day at their hospitals. That's the story. This is kind of a sad story I'm going to end on. But that's the full story I wanted to share with you folks. So look up Dr. Norman Finkelstein, Rabbi Israel Wise of Netre Karta, and just Google some of those former Jewish psychiatrists in New York City if you're interested to see how they view all those biblical stories about cutting off penises, circumcision, and better covenants, and killing the Amalekites. And, you know, this guy, people saw Yahweh, and they described him as 6 feet tall, you know, about 200 pounds, 97 kilograms, 183 centimeters. He wasn't that different, but he had some gizmos, he had some gadgets on him, he had some electronic devices. That's what sort of separated him from the rest. He was an ordinary looking person visually, but he had some technologically advanced gadgets on himself that were not common during that time. That's how they described Yahweh, those who met him. And so you draw your own conclusions, but it seems like Yahweh, number one, he was not a creator of the universe. He was just a very minor desert god that was just claimed or invented by the Jews to be a separate group, you know. So they wanted to have their own god, folks. They all wanted to have their own god. But they were all taken. And to create your own god, it took a major undertaking. Anyway, that's my story for the day, folks. We love you very much. Join our movement. Join our family. Go to our website. Support us if you wish. Contact us if you want to come to Armenia. We'll help you get settled. We'll pay you salary. We'll find you an apartment, a house, a condominium, a pied-à-terre, whatever you wish. If you can contribute to the well-being of Armenia, we'll help you transition to Armenia. We'll help you move. This is the core message. We'll increase your faith. We'll help you move to Armenia. And you can join our commune. You could join our Noah's Ark eco-village if you wish. On this note, I want to wish you all the best. God bless you. Take care. And we'll see you at the top. To summarize everything we do at our organization, our goal is to awaken as many Christians around the world as possible. Hopefully to awaken 2.6 billion Christians around the world and 17 million fellow Armenians scattered around the world. Our goal is to share with the world a new way of thinking based on agape love, or the frequency of God, or that higher way of basically relating, connecting to our Creator. We are completely underdeveloped, disconnected from the Creator of the universe. That's why we can't do anything. We're in denial, we're in depression, we're depressed, we're full of anxiety, nothing works, our family is falling apart. Because the other side, the dark forces, keep disconnecting us from the source. And we keep falling away and falling away. And Armenia is one of those last bastions of Christianity or truth, where traditional family values are still relatively intact. But the dark forces are trying to attack Armenia and other countries where traditional family values are still practiced. You know, Ireland used to be the most Catholic and the most family-oriented country in the world. You could not even get a divorce in Ireland. Today, not only that you could get a divorce for no reason whatsoever, you could actually get a same-sex marriage license there, meaning to be married to a same-sex person. Can you believe that, folks? What a drastic change in Ireland. Now, what do you call that? A satanic revolution? I would call that, yes. To put it mildly, it is a satanic revolution. Satan won. Irish people are in the toilet, to put it very mildly. And they're just sort of marinating there. Nobody would help them. They just need to do a reset. Flush the toilet and hopefully something will happen to it. But yes, the Irish people are a good example of that. The last country remaining on earth at the time of this recording where they still disallow divorce is the Philippines. It's another Catholic country. What they do in the Philippines, they get an annulment of the marriage in extreme circumstances. So in other words, the annulment is allowed, but it requires extreme circumstances. It's not the same as a divorce. Extreme circumstances. So people are still kept together for the sake of the children, for the sake of maintaining a family structure. So the Philippines is the last bastion of a Catholic civilization, of a Christian civilization. It's a Catholic country, predominantly Catholic, where if they go into the toilet like the Irish did a few years ago, then we won't have anything else left, folks. The day the Philippines will declare that they could file for a divorce is the day our civilization, global civilization, will fall completely. So back to our mission, folks. Our mission is very simple. It's to awaken as many people around the world as possible and bring that 1% brain activity to at least for them to use maybe 5% of their brain, maybe 10%. With our Agape meditation, we could get it up to 80%. You'll begin to understand the language of the trees, of the animals. You'll be able to levitate. You'll be able to walk on water, heal the sick, cast out demons, raise the dead. This is what Jesus said we should be able to do. Why are you not doing those things, folks? You should be able to do it if you're a believer, but you can't. Why? Because you haven't seen the methodology. And this methodology is something we're going to share with you. So you could utilize maybe 10% of your brain, maybe 30% of your brain's capacity, that is. Right now, most people are fast asleep and they need to be awakened. That's why we call it the awakening, folks. You saw that at the beginning of our video, the awakening, because people are fast asleep. They're in a deep sense of, they're in a slumber. And we're going to try to awaken them, as many as possible. And we pray with all our hearts that many people would be receptive to our message. And like I mentioned, our brother Joel from the state of Iowa, when he heard about Armenia, when he heard about the Armenian Genocide, he told his wife, honey, we need to sell everything we have and move to Armenia. And that's what they did, folks. It wasn't a pleasure trip, folks. They have 6 children. Imagine moving 6 children with you. This is my hero. The reason why I call Joel Tenney a hero, because to do such a feat, it is truly a feat, folks. How do you tell your wife we need to move to another country, far away from the state of Iowa in the United States? How do you tell your wife we need to sell everything for the sake of having enough funds to live in Armenia and start a non-profit foundation to help the widows and the orphans? The widows of the Artsakh War, or the war in Artsakh, the several wars that have been happening, the 6,000 men that haven't returned home. So there are 6,000 wives and mothers. So widows and mothers who lost their sons. That's Joel Tenney. He's an awakened human being. And we pray for him daily and for his entire family, of course. So folks, this is our attempt to share with you as much as possible. And I'd like to close this message by saying, do not believe anything you see on your TV or on social media. There is no such thing as artificial intelligence, folks. Please don't believe it. It's a total lie. This term was coined by John McCarthy in 1956 at Dartmouth College in the state of New Hampshire. He coined this phrase because he needed money, grant money, so he applied to the Rockefeller Foundation and to other sources to sustain his program. He has a PhD in mathematics. All the mathematicians at that time, they were involved in computer science because computer science did not exist at that point. They were just involved in building computers. The first computer, called ENIAC, it was created in 1946 in the United States of America. The second computer, 5 years later, called UNIVAC. And many people even confuse them, folks. There's a ENIAC with a C at the end. And UNIVAC, VAC at the end, was created in 1951. So these are the first the forefathers of our supercomputers that we use today. So we don't call it artificial intelligence because there's no such thing, folks. The computers we use are massive, massive computers that are much more powerful than any computer you might have access to. And so these large language models are sold to the public as if these are the supercomputers, folks. Well, yes, they are, but they can only do one thing. They're the large language model. They just analyze a lot of data and they give you back some text or, voice commands or answer using a synthetic computer voice. But that's not artificial intelligence, folks. John McCarthy, again, coined this term to refer to something in the distant future that will mimic the human brain, which will never happen because of the complexity of a human brain. It happened in 1956. To this day, there is no such thing as artificial intelligence. These are simply large computers that run a certain program. That's it. And the way we use our supercomputers is for very practical reasons. How to break the laws of physics, how to prove that theory of relativity is completely wrong, and has been proven. So we create new laws of physics. We create new nanomaterials that are lighter than paper and stronger than steel. We create new alternative propulsion systems for our drones. That's why our hypersonic drones could reach from Chicago to Yerevan, Armenia in less than 6 minutes, folks, because they travel at incredibly fast rates of speed, at Mach 85. I'm referring to our RH-225 hypersonic drone that we call Aragats 225 for the Armenian application. But we have other types of drones, folks, even faster. This is our super compact drone just to give Armenia immediate defense against its very hostile neighbors. Because Armenia happens to be in that sort of a neighborhood with, the only Christian country surrounded by Muslim countries. Both Azerbaijan and Turkey don't have the friendly posture towards it. The Ottoman Empire caused the Armenian Genocide in 1915. And dozens of massacres prior to that, starting from the 1800s, which nobody wants to talk about for some odd reason. But anyway, our point is, we bring the truth, we awaken, we connect you to the frequency of God, so you could, for the first time, feel alive. Until that point, until you get to the frequency of God, you're not alive. You're bamboozled, meaning deceived by garbage from the toilet of Satan. And you're floating in that toilet and you think you're alive, folks. You need a hard reset. And that's what this awakening does, or will do to you. This is a Satori-like awakening. Satori is a Japanese term for instant awakening. It doesn't take years and years and years and years. No, folks, it's a simple Agape meditation that is 3,000 years old. It's very effective. That's why we're introducing it to you. So your eyes will be open. For the first time in your life, you'll begin to see the truth. As Jesus said, and the truth will set you free. Until that point, you're in bondage, meaning you're enslaved, meaning you're a slave to the system, to the dark forces. This world is under the direct control of the devil, or Satan, or the deceiver, or Lucifer, or what the Muslims call Iblis. There's a slight difference. Iblis refused to bow down to man upon its creation because he was made out of fire, and he would never bow down to the man that's made out of clay. But according to the Hebrew tradition, which everybody seems to copy everybody else, according to the Hebrew tradition, Satan, or Lucifer, which is Latin term for the morning star, the shining one, Venus, in the star in the early morning, when you look up, that's Lucifer, folks. The star named after Lucifer before his fall. Lucifer refused to do the same, refused to bow down before God and before the created being that had a spark of God in it, because he had clay around it. The biomechanical suit, folks, the device that carries the spark of God, rather primitive. So, and it limits us, meaning our bodies, our physical bodies, they are not of the same, they're not made out of the same material as the luminous bodies of angels. That substance is called subtle matter. It never dies. Neither do we, folks. It's just our physical bodies have been corrupted, the DNA. And we've identified those corrupted genes that limit the lifespan, that cause certain diseases. We're going to fix all that, folks. It's very, very possible with our supercomputers. Knowledge will increase, remember, the Bible says in the end times. And we are increasing our knowledge exponentially. We reach the technological singularity. So we're sharing with you this information. We'll provide for safety, security, unprecedented safety, security of Armenia, the first Christian nation. We're going to bring 17 million Armenians back to the Republic of Armenia. At first, we're going to move 3 million key players, key partners of Armenia, or Armenians who are mathematicians, engineers, or scientists, or business entrepreneurs who could contribute to the well-being of the Republic of Armenia. So our point is to make Armenia the most secure and prosperous country in the world, or at least in the region, and then in the world. We're using a similar strategy that LKY used in Singapore. LKY took his swampy little country of 500 square kilometers and turned it into a global financial center within 20 years or so. 20 years, folks, and Singapore became a global financial center. How is it even possible? It was just dedication, approach, focus, concentration, laser focus. That's what we're going to have. That's what we're going to do as well in Armenia. So on this note, I just want to emphasize this again. Human beings are extremely underdeveloped because they're asleep, fast asleep. And we're trying to awaken all human beings to the light of God. We call it the Agape meditation that will awaken you to the frequency of God. Once you are on the frequency of God, you'll be able to see everything the way it is. Did you know that trees, folks, trees have their own communication system? They're alive just like us. If you wandered into a meadow in a forest or some backwoods, you'll step into their kingdom. And if you could read their language, you would realize they all communicate to each other. For example, if one tree is suffering from excessive water conditions, if it's drowning, it will communicate it to the surrounding trees in that meadow. They have a very sophisticated underground network of, it's like our neural network, as our central nervous system inside our body. They have the same system. And by the way, mushrooms form the core foundation of that network for trees. Mushrooms, folks, mushrooms. Not the ones that grow above ground, but the ones who grow beneath. You can't see them. They have their own sophisticated system. So the trees would come to the aid of the tree that's drowning. And it will pump that water away from that tree that's in trouble. And vice versa. If the tree needs more water, the surrounding trees will meet the demand of that tree that's dying because of excessive drought, let's say. If it needs water, they'll supply it with more water. Folks, they operate as a family. These are trees, folks, trees. They're alive. Try to understand what I'm saying. And they will never have email, they'll never have computers, but they communicate. They're alive just like us, but in a much more primitive way, simpler way. If you don't know any of this, then you're ignorant of this thing called life. And we're trying to bring you up to speed in a very humble way, by the way, in all humility. Every time you're about to cut your cucumbers or tomatoes for your salad, they cry, folks. They scream for help. And this was scientifically recorded and proven by the German engineers using laser microphones. You could find it online. You could read about it. You could watch the videos. Yes, vegetables cry, scream for help when you're about to cut them because they're alive. Now, how about that, folks? Before you cut your apple, you need to ask for its, not consent, but you need to just sort of bless it and thank God for feeding you. But you need to say that we're going to be one in just a moment. Thank you for being there, you know. That's an acknowledgement of both the creator of the universe giving you this fruit, and then you will be acknowledging this fruit that you're going to eat, which is alive, completely alive, folks. It feels, in a more simpler way, it feels all the pain that you feel too. Again, before you cut a cucumber or a tomato, they actually feel the pain and fear. Before when you bring up your knife up against its skin, you know, they feel they're about to be killed. And they emit this sound that we cannot hear it, but it could be picked up by laser microphones. You can look it up. So everything is alive, folks. Everything is alive. There is no artificial intelligence. The human brain only uses about 1 to 5% at the most. Like if you're really, really well read and you're up to speed, you might use 5% of your brain's capacity. Otherwise, it's 1%, folks. And we're trying to bring it up to at least 80% using our Agape meditation and engaging your both left and right hemisphere. There's certain exercises, meditative exercises we're going to teach you, share with you, so you can bring up your capabilities from 1% to 80%. That's all we're trying to do here, folks. But most importantly, we're trying to introduce you to the frequency of God, so you could meet God face to face, so to speak. Because God is spirit, the only way to get to know Him is to get on His frequency, the frequency of His spirit. Noetic Light, folks. Noetic Light is the brightest light in the universe. It's the uncreated light of God. It's the emanation of God. And it's within us all, because we are the sparks of God's creation. God is within us, and we also shine on that frequency, folks. We've just unfortunately been kind of detoured. We've been deceived by the evil forces who don't want us to know this secret. Our secret is that we and God are one. We and God vibrate on the same frequency if we are sort of pointed to that frequency. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to point you to that way to be reconnected with God. But the dark forces don't want you to do that. They want you to be scared, afraid, depressed, full of anxiety. They want you to consume alcohol and tobacco and drugs, and they want you to be dead. They want you to overdose on drugs, folks, eventually, after they're done fooling around with you and tormenting you. That's what we're trying to share with you, folks. We're trying to share with you these spiritual secrets so you'll have a more fulfilled life on this planet that we call Earth. And then you'll begin to think in more galactic terms. Like we're located on the fourth arm of the Milky Way galaxy, that we travel at the speed of 600 kilometers per second against the cosmic microwave background, which is about 2.3 million kilometers per hour, folks. That's the speed with which we travel. And we travel in every sort of direction, like a centrifuge. I'd like to conclude that we love you very much. This is why we're creating this material. We're sharing with you the secrets of the universe. The most important part, folks, is what we're doing on this planet, who we are, why we're here, and where we're going after our physical hearts will stop beating, because our biomechanical devices or suits or our bodies will give out one of these days. And we never die, folks. That's the whole secret. We never die. It's a very instantaneous transition to the other side. Nothing changes. You realize, oh my God, this is all real. And it's instantaneous. You can't go back. You can't go back. You can't go back. Those are just a few cases out there, 1 out of a billion that they say they went back. But really, not really, folks. You can't go back. Once you realize you've transitioned on, you've missed out this tremendous opportunity to grow spiritually, to get to know God, to get on His frequency, and to help others experience His agape love. Using a scientific language, folks, agape love is simply a very high frequency modulation that God operates on, the creator of our universe operates on. He operates on a very, very high frequency, and if we were to see it with our eyes, we could not handle it. So that's why the only thing we could sort of relate to it, we can relate to it by saying kindness, helping people, helping animals. And folks, talk about animals. Just look at your screen right now. Everything we touch, everything human beings touch goes into the toilet, like I said earlier. There are thousands upon thousands of whales and dolphins that throw themselves on beaches around the world. Why? Because the water is polluted, and also, besides water being highly polluted, ships and submarines use sonars, and they blind them permanently. Dolphins and whales use their natural sonar system inside their head. This is how they hunt, this is how they navigate. And when the powerful military or civilian ships, when they point their sonars to get their directions, they blind those poor whales and they blind those dolphins and other type of fish that can't see anymore. And that's why they just choose to die. They just throw themselves on beaches and they just die, because for them, folks, it's like you being blinded. When you can't see, I don't know what sort of life that is, when you can't see all of a sudden. But for them, folks, how could they possibly function? That's why they come to the shore and they hope that maybe someone will help them. Nobody's there to help them. Look at those pictures, folks. Look at those pictures of those whales and dolphins. They're dying by the thousands every month. They're found around the world because of human activity. Human activity is usually negative in every industry, every sector we take. For example, illegal logging, folks. The Amazon rainforest. The Siberian taiga. That's right, the Canadian forest. The Canadian and the Siberian forests are the largest forests on planet Earth. And they're being illegally logged. And you can actually clearly see that from space. The ISS keeps tabs on those illegal loggers, and they see how they're carving out their space in the Siberian forest and in Canadian forest. Bit by bit, folks. It's very visible, it's devastating. And then those illegal loggers, they sell those trees to the Chinese under the table, folks. It's all illegal. And so in Siberia, a lot of women now started to, a lot of women activists started to protect their forests. That's right, folks. Local Siberian women get together, they bring their rifles, and they go immediately. They have their walkie-talkies, and then they alert each other. If they know there's a bunch of poachers illegally logging their territory, they immediately go and they stop them, folks. Local Siberian women stop the illegal logging operators. That's how brave those women are. And I won't be surprised that pretty soon we'll get to the point where some of these activists, instead of protesting on the streets, they'll start detonating nuclear devices, folks, that they will probably get in Sofia, Bulgaria for $10,000. Those are the Soviet warheads from the 1991 dissolution of the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union dissolved, a lot of the nuclear warheads were sold pennies on the dollar to Sofia, Bulgaria arms dealers. And now they're circulating, folks, around the globe. You could buy a nuclear warhead for $10,000, folks, and instructions how to use it. So I'm not saying it will happen, but I won't be surprised if very soon people will switch from using conventional guns, like at mass shootings, to express their frustration, to using nuclear warheads at key targets in Washington, D.C., in New York City, and say, here, eat this. You want more war? Here's your war. Because if you think about it, every war was started in D.C. by those lobbyists, or war consultants, who are hired to promote the business of those military gear manufacturers. That's right, folks. If you have a bakery, you would hire a marketing consultant. And this marketing consultant will help you get more customers. People who like your products, who like your bread. And then you pay them a fee. It's very similar to war consultants or political lobbyists. Those lobbyists are hired by military gear manufacturers. And those weapon manufacturers, they pay them millions of dollars so that those people will be sitting in their little offices in DC and they'll be concocting schemes how to start a war in Iraq, how to start a war in Ukraine with Russia, how to start a war in Iran, and on and on and on and on and on. Folks, the United States was involved in over 80 wars since 1941. Illegal wars, folks, fake wars, engineered wars, just for the sake of profit. For example, in 1964, this is how the second phase of the Vietnam War got started, or got used to its maximal potential, just for the sake of bolstering the economy, the military-industrial complex of the United States. So what happened there was the American military ship reported that they're being attacked by the Vietnamese. And that was a false flag operation. They were never attacked. How do we know? Because a brave American activist, Daniel Ellsberg, published 7,000 pages in the New York Times. That's right, folks. He published a few years later. But we got to know all the details, how everybody profited to the tune of, at that time there were millions of dollars, but today it's billions of dollars. Daniel Ellsberg, look him up, folks, look him up. He is the bravest human being in the history of the United States, I think. He opened the lid. Just this tiny little percentage of we, the public, got to know how corrupt the system is. So every war operates just like the war in Vietnam. It's a false flag operation, then they benefit. The war starts and they make billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars, folks, because they worship the devil. They're all satanic. They're children of the devil. What Jesus told to the Sanhedrin, remember? The Bible says Jesus looked at the Jews and he said, "Why can't you understand my language? Because you belong to your father, the devil. And he was a deceiver from the beginning. And you cannot trust him, and he only is concerned about death. Wherever he goes, he speaks the language of lies and death and destruction." And so Jesus told it to the Sanhedrin in Jerusalem, to the Sadducees and the Pharisees. But the same applies to those who are in charge of paying consultants, who are probing those wars. How do you start a war, folks? Well, they're being taught. They're taught that craft. They're taught how to start wars, folks. Imagine you get up in the morning, you go to work, and you earn a living to support your family. And these consultants do the same, folks. Every day they drive to their little offices and they create opportunities for wars. It has nothing to do with Saddam Hussein. It has nothing to do with Vladimir Putin in Russia. It has nothing to do with Vladimir Zelensky in Ukraine. Those are just the victims of the schemes of those lobbies, folks. That lobby is very powerful. So in other words, those are consultants who scheme, engineer those wars. And they put those countries at war with each other or with the United States. It's very easy to do, folks. It's just the same carbon copy principle like what they used since 1964 in the Gulf of Tonkin. That's how the Vietnam War, second phase of it, started. And it's all documented. We all know it's true because of Daniel Ellsberg, who exposed those lies, exposed those schemes, exposed that scam, exposed a satanic, diabolical operation, folks. Daniel Ellsberg, 7,000 documents, folks. You should read it sometimes. It's incredible. So on this note, we bring the truth of the gospel. We bring the truth, folks, to all Christians, to all Muslims, to people who are just spiritual seekers, people who would like to move to a safe country where the traditional family values are still upheld, and that is the Republic of Armenia. Thank God that is still intact. The purpose of this channel and of our messages is to awaken you to the truth, to help you get closer to God, and to help you move to Armenia if you so choose. Just like Joel Tenney moved to Armenia after he heard about that it was the first Christian nation, about the traditional family values, and the fact that, Armenia needed people like Joel, that he could do some major work through his nonprofit helping orphans and widows who lost their husbands and sons in the last few wars with Azerbaijan, between Armenia and Azerbaijan. So that's Joel Tenney, folks. If you have the same disposition as Joel Tenney, if you're so inclined to move to Armenia, write to us. we would be happy to facilitate your move. We would be happy to assist you in any way we know how. If we can't, we'll connect you with other organizations in Armenia who will be able to help you with your relocation. So you could find a job. They have various programs, folks, for your job qualifications, depending on your background. So if it's not through us, we'll connect you with the right organization, folks. The point is, if you'd like to move to a Christian country with traditional family values, where there's still a husband and wife and children as the only sort of a nucleus of a society and nothing else, no other monkey business, so to speak, then Armenia is your destination. Very, very kind people, very family-oriented people. There's God and family, number one for Armenians. That's it, folks. Contact us. Go to our website, myarmenianfamily.com. Go to a contact form. Send us your information. If you wish to send us your resume or your CV, you could do so. You could upload up to a 10 megabyte file. We prefer a PDF file. And we'll have a better idea about your qualifications so we can connect you with the right person. Our team will be in touch, discuss your desires, and will help you move to Armenia. On this note, I want to say thank you for your precious, precious time that you spent with us today. This was not by accident. This was God's will. I operate in the Spirit. And if you were searching for this, this was the answer to your prayers. God has used me to communicate to you that your prayers have been answered. So if you were searching and looking for such an opportunity to move to such a wonderful country, Christian country, where traditional family values are still upheld, you could do so. If you'd like to just come to Armenia, you don't need a visa for most countries. If you'd like to permanently relocate to Armenia like Joel Tenney did, we will assist you in doing so, especially if you're an engineer, a scientist, or a mathematician. We'll find you a well-paying job, an apartment, a house, or condominium, and a car or SUV, whatever you prefer. And if we can't help you, we'll connect you with a local organization in Armenia. There are several options. So write to us, go to our website, share this information with your friends and family members, especially if you're part of our Christian family, 2.6 billion strong around the world. And if you're a fellow Armenian, there are 17 million of us scattered around the world. Please also do the same. Share it with your family and friends. On this note, folks, I want to wish you all the best. God bless you. Peace be upon you at all times. We want to see you at the very top. We want to see you in Armenia, and we'll talk to you very soon. Take care.